And then about 2 years ago, my father had some health issues, and I was working for the Mat-Su Borough as one of the clerks who did the first hand count, and I just decided I needed to take a year off and spend with my father. And then the state contacted me almost a year to the day and said, we would love for you to come work for us and provide what I have done for 20 years to local communities. This month alone, I am giving this training specifically to the City of Palmer, City of Cordova, Beverly, Mission, and the City of Anderson. The question the request I have of the council is that all of the questions be germane to what you see up on these slides. These slides have been approved by the Commissioner's Office. I cannot vary on any other discussion items. If you have a question, feel free to email me, and I'm required by law to answer that email, and also if you're a citizen. So today, if you hear something and you want more information, please email me, and I will provide you the information. And this is open to questions from council members. So if I know I will try to stay still. However, I do like to move. I get very passionate about this. I believe in the system. I believe in the rights of the people. I believe in the city councils. That's why I still do this job close to retirement. So I am very passionate about this. So this is our department. This is everything that we do under the commissioners, which is under the governor's office. We do the grants and funding, so all funding for municipalities, that is in our department. We do the Serve Alaska, we do floodplain management, community resilience programs, we do the Alaska Regional Development Organization. The Office of the State Assessor is like 3 doors down from me. We have what's called ANSCA, the Municipal Land Trust. I am learning all about that right now. That's something very new to me. The Local Boundary Commission is in our department, Made in Alaska, Mapping Analytics. The Bulk Loan Program, which is part of mine, and the Local Government Assistance is what allows me to be here today. And the Rural Utility Business Advisors, which we call RUBA. And that is also in our division. I want to show the public and the City Council our website real quick. And I'm going to try to do this. Let's see. Should have it. Let's see. Pull this over. So this is our website. The mission of our office is to help Alaska communities build sustainable economies and a means of self-governance, where we're going to talk about today. Here, if you click on this, hopefully I can go back. This is how many local government assistants we have, which is what I am. I am personally a supervisor, so I have the Nome region. I have, when I say I have, my staff, the Nome, the Fairbanks, and the Dillingham offices. However, my assignments are City of Palmer, the Mat-Su Borough, City of Anchorage, the municipality of Anchorage. So that's how you can find, that's our website. And Benji can definitely get you guys my contact information. Like I said, if you're a community member or a council member or staff member. Let's see. I was telling them earlier, when I was 12 years old, I did not necessarily plan on doing this. Oh, I missed that. Obviously, I can do Open Meetings Act and some things and Robert's Rules, but not this. Benji, can I get a little bit of help, maybe? Sure. I did that thing again. Oh, I just got to pull the PowerPoint up. Got it. Got it, yeah. Sorry, John. So, got a little icebreaker here. I talked about who I am. Why, and I just real quick, why did I decide on local government? Well, I really did decide. I was going through a really bad divorce, and I had owned my own business with my husband, and I had a community need a clerk, and I said, I'll do it. And here I am all these years later. I have mentored over 100 clerks, I've just been doing this a long time. Why do I still do it? It's because I believe in it. I believe in it. I believe in elections. I believe in the process. I believe in this process. I believe in the public's right. And I still get goosebumps. If I tear up, it's because I totally believe in all of this. And if ran correctly, the benefits of it. So I just want to go around and we'll ask the council members if they feel comfortable answering some of these things. It would help me as well know what you would like to get out of the training. Deputy Mayor, I'm going to start with you since you asked for this training.
Yeah, my name is Josh Shooter. I want to become a council member. This was right after the recall election. I was already on planning and zoning, and that's actually how Councilman Alcantara and I both came on here. They needed volunteers to be on council, and so we both kind of threw our hat in and were selected, and then just wanted to help our community and try to make this place better and try to make Palmer better today than it was yesterday.
Perfect. What would you like to get out of this today? If you could say, Sonia, I'd like to learn one thing today, what would it be?
Oh, I honestly,
all of it?
Yeah, honestly, just all of it. I mean, there's been a lot of questions, especially about the Open Meetings Act. I want to make sure we don't run afoul of it, but also that we have a good understanding of what constitutes an OMA violation versus something that's not, and just trying to make sure, like I have a good understanding of how the processes are supposed to work, and also to make sure that we're doing things not just out of tradition, but what's supposed to happen, and to make sure that we're doing everything correctly.
Great. And I don't have names, so
no, you're good.
If you could say your name too.
Yeah, my name is Victoria Hudson, council
member.
Hudson, or council member. I was just asked actually by constituents to run for the position, and how long have I been on the council? Since October.
Oh, no.
Yep. And one thing I would like to get out of training today, I think that along the same lines as Councilman Tudor, Deputy Mayor Tudor, sorry. And just try to make sure that the city that we're following, OMA, and also just some of the code and some of the different rules.
Perfect. That's what the commissioner said. Go teach. So that's good. How about you?
My name is Carolina Graver, and I decided to become a council member. Well, actually, I didn't really want to, but so I was appointed back in January 2022. I had an internship canceled twice because of COVID, 2 years in a row, and I was really frustrated about that. And then I started to pay more attention to local government and realized how instrumental that was in, downstream politics, but also I worked locally and just seeing how the mandates went into place and things like that, and how I could be part of that decision-making process. And then Steve appointed me, and then I ran that fall and won a 3-year term. So I've been on the council since January 2022, and then I appreciate what Josh said about making sure that we're following not just tradition, but also the rules, and just to make sure we're all on the same page and it's appropriate.
Perfect. Mayor?
I'm Steve Carrington. I had someone ask me if I wanted to consider being involved with the city, and I think they suggested P&Z. I looked at that, but that year they also had like 4 slots open in the council.
Oh, okay.
So I went ahead and ran for a 1-year slot and got in. I've been on probably about between council and mayors 20 years in the last 30. So.
Well, Mayor, some of this might be very basic for you, but I hope that something that I say will maybe a little light bulb and you feel...
Refresher is always good.
Refresher is always good. And then, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. My name is John Alcantara, council member, like Councilmember Tudor, Deputy Mayor Tudor mentioned. We both got appointed back in May of 22.
Okay.
Since then, I got elected in October 22 and elected again in October of 24. For years and years, friends and neighbors tried to get me to run for city council, but I had a pretty good job in Anchorage. And the downside of that job was it was a 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. job, so I never really got home until about 7 o'clock. And when I did get home, I was coaching soccer, coaching Little League baseball, doing other things that seemed way more important. But I spent a lot of time in Juneau. I go back to the days, of course, when Community Regional Affairs was its own department.
Oh yeah, now we have all of those.
So yeah, it's been, I'm obviously a little bit older than some and been around here a long time. So really it was just an opportunity for the last 6 years now. I've worked at Job Corps here in Palmer, 7 minutes away. So even having a job, it's done at 5 in the afternoon, and I can be here for meetings and council meetings and take a little time off when we have special events like this. And this event I think is important more than anything. I'm pleased to see 6 or 7 of us here. I'm happy to see that, and I think all singing off the same sheet of music would be a great thing, and all kind of having a similar understanding of not just OMA, but all the things that entail serving a local government body. So yeah, I'm really excited to have you here, and definitely think it's worth a Friday afternoon. So
thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Ken Irby. I'm on the council. I was just appointed just a few weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
One of the council members resigned.
Okay.
But I was on the council before.
Okay.
I was first elected in 2003. I was asked by one of the current council members to run, and so I did. So, and then I served for 12 years, and then I've been off for the past 10.
Okay.
So that was both of those questions. The last one, yeah, I would just like a refresher.
A refresher. So this training usually is provided by a municipal clerk. And I was mentioning this to Benji earlier. Usually what happens is after an election, it's best practice for the clerk to give training, right? New, old, it can happen different ways. However, in some cases, I am requested or an LGS is requested to come in. City of Cordova, the clerk's been there 20 years. She's like, Sonia, I need a third party to come in, right? So same thing. And sometimes like some of these council members say is it practice? It's just been doing it this way for this long. Is it right, wrong? Sometimes it's gray. But today what I really hope that you take away is even if it's a gray, that you think about what's the best for the public. You will hear me say that a million times. What's the best for the public? So even if there's not a statute or your code or your charter, which I might mess up on a few times because your home rule, I don't do a lot of home rule, but I'm getting better at it. So these are some of the things we're going to talk about, kind of talked about who we are. We are the Division of Community and Regional Affairs. I've actually only been with the state for 6 months, and this is, I will be doing 10 of these trainings in the first 6 months, and I've given them to all of our local government specialists, so I'm really feeling like good about it. I love it. And council, please ask questions, right? There are no stupid questions. If you don't feel comfortable asking the question in public, email me, right? And so that's what the goal is that you're educated. We're going to talk about just our basic Alaska Local Government 101. We're going to spend a lot of time on what your roles and responsibilities are, ethics for council members, conflicts of interest, and then we're going to talk about meetings. How long do your guys' meetings go? Usually, like on average?
Like 2 hours.
Oh, okay, so not bad. Okay, that's good. I have a lot of communities that go 2 days. And so then we need to talk about why those meetings are going 2 days, right? So 2 to 3 hours, that's when I see that, I'm like, we need to talk. We need to talk. There's something going on, and usually there is. So that's a good amount of time. We are going to skip this index card exercise. So you don't need to write this down, but I want you, when these things come up, maybe just if you feel free to share of what word or phrase comes to your mind. So when you hear the term maximum local self-governance, what do you think about that? Anybody? Have you heard the term as a new council member? Not really. So we're going to talk a little bit about maximum local self-governance. The state of Alaska wants the communities to have the maximum local self-governance that they can. That's not like other states, right? So your city of Palmer, you are the council members. We want to allow within statutes your code. That's why the code, especially for home rule, if you have a charter or a code, there are certain places in Alaska statutes that says home rule is exempt. Now, city of Wasilla, city of Houston, I'm just going to use local, they're not allowed to move outside of Alaska statutes. So if it's in statutes, their code has to match it. Home rule's a little different. You can have a charter unless Alaska statute. Hey Benji, could you do me a favor? In my backpack is the Alaska statute book. Could you give that one to me?
That's a quick question.
Yeah.
So what happens if a non-home rule city were to pass legislation that conflicts with state?
A non-home rule?
Yeah.
Well, it depends what it is. So if it's a financial thing, so you have a city that, usually what happens is a citizen is gonna call us. Somebody sat in that meeting and they're gonna call us. Then if it's funding that the state is giving, you don't get that funding, right? Or we will assist in saying, hey, you guys didn't follow the statute. And you know, it's always fixable. Things are fixable for the most things, so we will help that community. If it's something outside of, say, like finances, they adopted an animal control ordinance, and, well, animal control is not a good example. They adopted something that contradicts Alaska statutes. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Meetings. They adopted, we're going to do 4 days of meetings instead of 5. A 4-day notice instead of 5. If that happened and a citizen came to us, we would contact the city, we would show them the statute, blah, blah, blah. And then if the city still chose not to change that, then we would let the citizen know your rights, and it's usually going to be a Supreme Court issue, right? They're going to have to go sue the city because Alaska statutes. And then what would happen is any votes made in that meeting, say it did go to court, any votes made in that meeting that only had 4 days, and if state law for an ordinance says 5, those votes aren't going to count. That ordinance, in essence, is not adopted, right? It's not codified. We can still do it. We are not, and I want to clarify, we are not regulatory. So we are here to assist and to advise. However, if something is done wrong, you don't adopt a budget, you're not getting funding. It's that simple. So regulatory, no. However, you do have to meet certain requirements to get certain things, right? Especially with Aruba communities, they have to adopt a budget. They have to adopt a budget. They have to have meeting minutes. There's certain things that they have to do to get federal funding, and that is funneled through our department. So, did that answer? I know it's
Yes.
a lot. I'm a talker.
Yeah, no, that's
I get
perfect.
carried away.
Yeah.
So, Alaska statutes. Like I said, if I get off track because you guys are home rule, you'll just have to have a little patience with me. Alaska statutes 29. This is still your number one. You're going to go to your charter, you're going to go to your code, and you want to make sure that it doesn't conflict and that you have the right as a home rule community to make those decisions. I do want to say, and I happened to call a council member, he's no longer a council member, but I served with him for 10 years. And I asked him, I said, you know, when I provided this training way back in the day, if you were to take away something, and he said that it's self-education, right? So even if your clerk tells you something, your attorney tells you something, your whomever, self-education. You need to make sure that you understand the law and that you understand the rights, because sometimes they can be wrong. And I'm not saying not take the advice of the attorney, not take the advice of your city clerk. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying to review what information has been given to you and to make sure that's right. I've been wrong. I've been wrong as a municipal clerk before, and then a council member would come up and say, wait a minute, what about this? And I'd be like, you're absolutely right. So it's just important that you, I thought that was good advice from him. Council roles and responsibilities. Anybody got, how do you feel about being a council member? Are the roles more than you guys thought? Responsibilities, or do you not really know the responsibilities yet? About what they you thought, okay. Anybody else, how do they feel about the roles and responsibility of the council member? I've had some really good, interesting answers on this. So I've gotten to where they feel like they are not being productive, right? The things that everybody became a council member usually for a purpose. There was something you believed in, you want to do it. And then the clerk is telling me I can't do this. The attorney's telling me I can't do this, right? So when I get this answer, sometimes I get a lot of people saying, I can't do anything. I don't feel like I can, and what are my options? What are my motions? So I get that answer a lot on that one. City council meetings, I'm glad to hear, I've actually heard where they're worthless. I've heard people say they're 2 days long, we didn't approve anything in 2 days. Nothing. So how do you guys feel about your city council meetings? Do you feel that they're productive, unproductive?
I feel a lot better about it now.
Yeah, 2 days is long. Well, and what's interesting, what their problem was on that one? There were no action items on their agenda. So when I looked at their agenda, all it said was discussion, 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 2 pages. And I asked the clerk, I said, where's the item? What are they voting on? Discussion can last 40 minutes, right? You're outside of Robert's rules at a certain point with those things. So we need to, and we'll talk more about a discussion item and what a motion looks like in the debate. How long should a debate last? Surprisingly, not very long. DCRA, that is my division. And I think you mentioned DCRA has been around a long, long time. I should know this. It was on my test when I got hired, but I don't remember it. And I hope my boss isn't watching because she said, Sonia, that was on your test. So what happened is when the state constitution happened and we are saying all of these communities need assistance, right? We want them to all have self-governance, but they also need assistance. The Local Government Assistance Program, ECR, well, it used to be called it's been called a lot of things. We are created that we go and assist. Like I said, we are not regulatory. I'm not writing your guys' things down today and saying, oh, they don't do that. But what we are here is to assist the public, the citizens, and staff. I'm here to help staff. I get probably 20 emails a day. Mine's a little different because I have larger communities. So I have like Anchorage. Well, Anchorage reached out to me once and I had a party. I felt like, oh my gosh, they want to know something, so in the Matsu Borough is one of mine. So I have a lot of larger ones, but my teams have very small ones. I was shocked how many communities don't even have an election. That's the one that took me for a minute because I've done this for so many years. I've done 30 elections, right? And I'm like, what do you mean you've never done an election? And so I fly out and I assist that process, right? That is part of my duties. So this is pretty basic, but we have 3 levels of government. We have our local, our state, and our federal. I'm going to spend a lot of time on these. What gives you the elected officials the right to make decisions and take actions? What gives you guys that right?
Well, I think it was because we're elected by the people and representatives.
It's one of them. Sure is. Well, these ones always get me when it does that. What gives you the authority? The Constitution gives you the authority. It provides for maximum local self-governance. That's why we're not regulatory, right? Self-governance. Doesn't mean we can't assist, but we provide for the maximum local self-government. Cities shall have powers and functions conferred by law. A home rule city may exercise all legislative powers not prohibited by law or chapter. And we'll talk a little bit about that, especially for new council members, when you learn how to read Title 29. And it says, this is required, including home rule. That means that Councilmember Joe cannot introduce an ordinance, but this says that is not allowed outside of that. For first class, second class cities, they can't deviate from this, or they shouldn't, I should say. They can, but what happens when they do? So this is the Alaska statute. Title 29 has home rule limitations. So if you open this up, if you have an ordinance in front of you and you want to ask a question, you're going to open this up and you're going to see, does it say home rule limitations? And if it does, then you need to see what it says. Does it allow you to do it or does it not allow you? These are some other ones. This actually needs updated because we have marijuana now. Other titles that you would need to be familiar with is your Title 4, your Title 15 elections, Title 40. Your guys on 15 for elections is a little bit different. So what people and clerks usually use 15 for is if their code is silent. So if I'm a clerk, my code is silent, which means there's nothing in it, something has happened. I'm like, what do I do? I'm going to go to Alaska Statute 15 elections, and I'm going to look it up. And that usually, it's a lot larger, and it's going to talk about these laws in detail. Yes?
Speaking on elections,
Very short on that, but yes.
I'm curious because the two largest population bases, Anchorage and Mat-Su-Boro, have decided to change their elections to the April date and November date, as well as Denali Borough has a November date. But does it say in Title 15 or in Title 29 that unless otherwise authorized by the local government, that the election shall take place in the first Tuesday in October?
It sure does.
It does.
Yep.
Okay. But those two entities, the two largest entities in the state, decided they were going to have theirs on different.
I have two small communities actually looking to do that as well right now. It makes sense sometimes for smaller communities to do that. Small. As a clerk, I'm going to have a different opinion on this, but I'm not your clerk. But small communities, it's a lot. It's a lot for them to do it, right? So sometimes they do move to the same day as a state. But yes, Alaska law says unless otherwise provided by ordinance. Public Records Act. It is important that, and on my our website, you can get all of these titles, right? And you can search them, and then you can familiarize yourself with the public. And Title 44, Open Meetings Act, we're going to talk about that. We actually have some fun exercises because I don't want this to be a daunting, city council meeting. This right here is from 2002, and it is I used it as a clerk. We use it at the state. It is the most comprehensive. I love this writing. And I forgot, city attorney, you're supposed to holler if you ever hear me say something that you're like, whoa, Sonia. But
well, and I was telling her earlier that I would use this for several times too, and we were asking there's new supplemental law, but nothing that alters anything that I found. She's like, I haven't found anything either, but we're going to check if we do. Okay.
It's a great article on Open Meeting Act. It covers a lot of gray areas, right? It makes those gray areas where you as a council member are going to pause and you're going to say, how do I feel about this if I was a public member? Those are the questions you ask yourself. Clerk might say something, the mayor might say something, attorney, how do I feel about this? It's in that gray area. Also gives you elections, public hearings. Public hearings give you right? So you have a public hearing and you have testimony from 10 people. I am going to tell a couple of stories only because I have a lot of experience with this. I had a council member once, marijuana coming up. She totally disagreed with marijuana. The council member did. And when it came time to vote, we had, in the community that I was in, the citizens were very pro-marijuana, citizens, not the council, citizens. So we had a public hearing that was so large that we had to move it to the second one. The mayor called a second public hearing. It had lasted for 8 hours, I think. We moved it. The citizens are saying, we want it. Came time to the council member to vote. She asked to speak to the clerk. She was crying. She says, I cannot, how I feel so strongly about this, I cannot vote yes, right? Or no, I cannot vote. That's what she told me. And I said, you have to vote. There are no options. You have to vote. Now I said, you have the right to ask for more information. You can postpone. I gave her all her options to vote. And I said, but your public has spoken. And unless there's something in front of you that prohibits it by law or that does this, right? I said, at that point, it's the people that have elected you. Your charter, that gives you rights. Your code of ordinances. Non-coded ordinances give you temporary, you're adopting a budget, right? Those are what a non-code ordinance does. What else? What else do you guys use for non-coded ordinance?
We adopt our budget through resolution.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. See? Resolution. What do you guys usually use non-coded ordinances for?
I really don't.
Don't do them a lot? Okay.
Very rare.
Yeah. Very.
So the reason a lot of communities use non-coded ordinances for budgets is because our ordinance is required to have what? A public hearing. So it's just a good way for them to say, hey, we're adopting our budget. I have seen them done by resolutions. It's just important to remember that they have to have a public hearing, at least one. And resolutions give you short-term power. They're usually, if something is, you're agreeing with it, you disagree, but a resolution should be written in a positive format, right? So those are tough. As a clerk, I never liked it when a resolution would come to me and they're like, we disagree with the Mat-Su Borough, write it up. Oh my goodness. So, but resolutions, when written correctly, even if you're opposed to something, they should be written in kind of I forgot the term. It's been a while. I slept since I was a municipal clerk. So, policies and procedures. Some communities have council, do you guys have any other council require, like what is the word I'm looking for? Code of ethics. Do you guys have a council code of ethics? Okay, so that's a policy that you guys have adopted. Quite a few cities have those. There's different feelings I have about a code of ethics. I think they are a good tool, but you also need to remember with the code of ethics, and we talk about ethics a little bit. If you have that, and a council member goes outside of that, you can't get rid of that council member because they wrote the code of ethics, right? Mm-hmm. The public puts them in, public takes them out. That's it. So I like code of ethics. I think they're good to have if they're used correctly. I think they're extremely, can be useful. I worry about communities that have them and then use them against each other. Title 29, that's what we talked about, is a set of state laws that deal directly with municipalities, even as a home rule city. A lot of people say Title 29 doesn't apply to us. Yes, it does. You need to make sure if that certain law applies to you. It's updated annually by the legislators. It is organized into a title, chapter, section. I know, Mayor, some of this might be boring for you. You probably know how to do this in your sleep. So 2920, so you have the title, the chapter, the section, the subsection, right? Just like your ordinances or what you guys have in your code. Oh, look at there. I feel like I'm being, So, okay, here's a good example. A member of the governing body is elected for a 3-year term and until a successor qualifies unless a different term not exceeding 4 years is prescribed by home rule charter or ordinance. So that allows you as a home rule charter, or any municipality, actually in this case, because it allows by home rule charter or ordinance. I'm just pull all these up because it drives me crazy. Otherwise, I'll just important terms: shall versus may, unless otherwise provided by ordinance. That question that you asked earlier. This section applies to home rule general law. So you have an ordinance in front of you. It confuses you or the public, saying you have an ordinance, you're looking at it. You can get this on our website, the electronic version. We no longer print these out because our friends are not allowed to do this anymore, but you can get it online. So you're going to find that. It's super easy. I think I have a slide here that shows you how to search quick, but you're going to use the keyword, right? Like dog ordinance. And then you're going to say, if it says this section applies to home rule and general laws, first class, second class, boroughs, cities, that ordinance needs to match this, right? Now, if it says, what was the other term for home rule? I don't remember. But if it allows the home rule to have something else, then you can, right? So then you just need to make sure. Yes.
So
Josh.
so it's always specified in Title 29 if it's applied to home rule or not.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Not like every law is not
Sure.
going to have that statement.
Okay.
But if you see that statement, you need to make sure that you have done more homework in state law, or you contact your attorney or the state and say, hey, because sometimes those laws, public records, right? Open Meetings Act, it can mention it in 29, but it's also going to talk about it in 44. You know what I mean? So it's going to go across different laws. It's not all in one place. Elections, same, right? Like you're going to go to 29, but then it's going to move to 15 if your code is silent on it. So it's important. And I liked what that a gentleman said. He says, if I could say one thing to a council, especially new people, educate yourself. There are so many tools out there to do it. So I'm not saying argue with staff. I'm not saying question staff, but I'm saying educate yourself and know, learn it yourself. And if it's gray and it doesn't seem clear, ask, what about this? I never got tired as a clerk, somebody coming to me and saying, I don't understand. Explain this to me. Never got tired of that. Because you know what that meant to me? That they read it. They read it. They have questions. They just didn't go in at the day of the meeting and say yes. Because then I'm going to get angry. Not angry, sorry, but I'm going to get upset because I know they didn't read it, right? I would rather have a million questions. Subject to Alaska statute. If you see that, that's just going to say, it's going to reference another statute, right? Subject to statute, if you're talking something, it's going to say subject to this statute or that. So those are important terms. Shall and may, real quick. I was looking at a code the other day, not Palmer's. There is a section in their code on their, I'm doing this same training for them. And when I got to the point where it said postings of agendas, because we talk about that, it said may. They may do it 5 days in ahead. And man, when I'm at that community, what do you think the first recommendation I'm going to be for that council to update? It needs to say shall. The city clerk shall post the agenda 5 days in advance. Because may, I'm like, so what does that mean? What does that mean?
You don't have to.
You don't have to, right? So shall and may in certain things, especially if your charter, in your guys' case, and statute says an agenda shall be posted 5 days, that's a prime example, then your ordinance needs to say 5 days or reference statute, right? It can simply reference statute too. Reasonable, significant, and other unclear terms. We have one thing when it comes to reasonable notice given. So statute says reasonable notice given for a special meeting or an item. So we're gonna talk about one case law where the municipality of Anchorage followed state law, they followed all the things, their code, everything, but then it went to court and the judge ruled it was not reasonable because of the item that they were voting on for the people's sake, right? Another thing, it's real easy. Like, I think a lot of this gets built up in our heads, and it's such an easy process. So let's say you have, trying to think of a community. I had a mayor, and she wanted to, let's just use something simple. She's gonna say, we have a $10 business license right now. We're gonna raise it to $250, and we're gonna do it within 30 days. And maybe you have 500 businesses in your community. And the clerk, and then who's ever doing the business license, like, I can't get that notice, like, I can't get a letter out because I'm sick. Simple motion. You get to that second meeting, council member says this is not reasonable. Like, I don't disagree with the amount, but the public doesn't have enough time. I don't think this is, I make a motion to call a second public hearing at the regular next month's meeting. Easy schmeezy. Doesn't mean they disagree with the $150, but they're saying it's not a reasonable amount of time. Or if it's a significant vote. What does significant mean, right? Significant means if you as a council member, if that law was in front of you as a public member, you have the right now to say, you know what? Councilmember Joe, I appreciate your ordinance. I actually like it, but I want more time. I think this is a significant change in our city. I want more time for the public. And then that's what that, and other unclear terms, I get those on a daily basis. You guys don't scan these QR codes because I cannot guarantee that it's gonna go to Palmer. I just thought of that. I'm like, I don't know what, I hope that's Palmer's code up there, but it might be Cordova's. I don't know. So your municipal code, I feel like I'm talking a lot. Does anybody have questions? I see what I say, I'm passionate, so then I get all excited about it. Any questions, Mayor?
Doing good.
Doing good. I talk fast. I really believe in all of this, and so I get excited about lots of things when it comes to local government. That's why they hired me. They called me and said, you want a dab? And I was like, I'm really liking working in my garden and hanging out with my grandbabies this summer, but maybe. So your municipal code is a set of laws specific to that municipality. It is foundational. It's amendable. I think council members, sometimes we don't think about, first of all, how easy it is to fix something. Everything can almost be fixed. You do something wrong, it can be fixed. There are a few times it can't. Then we got to figure that out. But I am shocked about how many people don't realize how many things are fixable. Amendable. Robert's Rules is such an amazing tool if used correctly. If you don't have a strong clerk, and I know in your guys' case right now, you don't have a clerk and Benji is stepping in. So what I would tell Benji is, Benji, you know my phone number very well. If you have a council member who comes to you and says, or the attorney, and says, I don't like this. I see it preferably before the meeting, right? At the City of Houston, I required my council members to write them out, the motions, and which I had a little thing in the beginning, but by the end of it, what we did, council member, I would have 10, City of Wasilla does this, 10 motions before that second meeting that are all posted for the public. So the public is seeing ahead of time, and it would say possible motion to amend ordinance 1617 by council member
Tudor,
Tudor. And so council member Tudor, you have notified the public at that next meeting you will possibly change that. Now, sometimes they change their mind. Why would they change their mind? Public testimony, right? So maybe the public sees that motion, but like, So the public shows up. I do not like Councilmember Tudor's or Deputy Mayor Tudor's motion that's up here. And so they're testifying and you're like, you know what? I'm not gonna make it. Easy schmeezy, just because it's posted, as long as it says pending, and I know Wasilla does the same. You don't have to do it, but you could go to the clerk ahead of time and say, I'm gonna make this motion, right? There's a lot of motions up there that you guys have the right to make. Your code should be amended and updated regularly. The city I was talking about where it says May, when I'm out there next week, I'm gonna work with the clerk and I'm gonna recommend that they amend that word May. Should be codified regularly. A lot of our small communities have never codified their code. These clerks have ordinances that have been voted on by council members for 50 years. They do not have a code. They are still writing everything out on a piece of paper.
You can explain that?
Codified?
Yeah.
Codified. So what you guys have right now is considered a codified code. You adopt an ordinance. Benji, do you guys use the online vendor?
Yes.
So then that ordinance is then sent to Benji or the clerk's office, you codify it. So what we have a lot of communities that adopt ordinances and it's never put in a code book. It's never codified. It's never made into a law that the public can come see. It is just ordinance sitting around.
So they just write them in this.
Write them out and they sit them. So what happens is a lot of times we go out to the communities, and this is tough. We take all those ordinances and
I'm
we
like,
we codify a code book for them. And there is a state law, and I forgot what the term is, but there's a state law that gives us the right to take all of the, if we can find them, we take all their ordinances for 50 years, we codify it, we say Title 1, Title 2, Title 3, we put election ordinance here, council ordinance here, but they've never done that. Probably about half our communities in the state of Alaska have not done that.
So Josh, what we do is, after I get the resolutions and the ordinances signed by the mayor and the city clerk, I do process them and send them off to code publishing. And then you'll see on our city code, it'll say updated through such and such.
Yeah.
Because I've sent those ordinances and things off to our code publisher to get them more codified.
So she is
So that's
codified.
part of the deputy clerk's duties.
So the vendor is codifying, but the clerk is making sure all those ordinance. For the public, if you go on a city's website and you see hasn't been codified since 2016, that's a problem. That's a problem. If the city council or borough has been adopting ordinances and they're not updating them, copy of all your changes should be in print in your office and sent to DCRA and your magistrate or court system. I have a note on this. I'm probably skipping past all my notes, but whatever. I just like to talk. Why do you think they should be sent to DCRA, and what maybe makes Palmer a little different, or maybe you don't have to? You got any ideas on that?
So you check on us.
Huh?
You check on us.
Yeah, no. But what happens, Mayor, is like right now, I have a community that had a fire. They have no ordinances. They never codified their book. They have no website.
We'll have a backup.
We were able to pull all the ordinances from 1960 that luckily somebody sent in the mail. We scanned them. That's why for you guys have a system, right?
We just send them to the court system.
Why do you send them to the court system?
I don't, because that's what I was told to do.
You want to see? You guys want to see why you send them to the court system? I'll show you. And this is good. I checked for you guys, but I'll show you why you send them to the court
This
system.
is part of being codified is they standardize it. So like anything to do with alcohol will end up in Title 4. I mean, it's a standardization so that you
Yep.
know to look in the same spot every time for
That's
other things.
That's one of the uniform citations, Alaska. I hope this is the right website. Okay, yep. So we're gonna pull this up. So Benji, this is why you send them. So this is called the Uniform Table of Minor Offenses. Not all communities have this. I looked, Palmer, where are you guys? Oops. So when you send that to the court, if you have updated Palmer Municipal Code, Title 110, use of city seal without permission prohibited, this gives you the authority, and the state has agreed that you can fine $300. If you do not send your ordinances in, and it says 200, and so it looks like this last one for Palmer, report was created 6/3. So it says the following offenses are currently listed in the court's uniform minor offense table. To update this list, so this allows you, your police, whomever you've assigned. I think you guys have a police force. Okay. This is what gives that authority. This is what is notifying the court that you have changed that amount. And if you don't have this, then it can't go through the court system. So you guys have like depositing poison. Yeah, you guys have a pretty good one. This is also, but yeah, this is why you send them to the courts right here. You guys have a lot. That's what that is. That's why you send them to the courts. So that's another good thing. If you have an ordinance that you're changing a fine, right? You're changing a fine schedule, like you're changing the fine is now 50 and it used to be 100 or whatever. What you want to do is you're going to want to make sure, first of all, that you're allowed to do that. You're going to want to make sure that you update, I think it's in your Title 1, because you're changing your fee schedule. So you can't just take that section of code where it talks about dog licenses and change that. You would have to work with your clerk and your attorney to make sure that your Title 1 is also updated. So you have an ordinance. You guys have those where it's like, adopts numerous sections, right?
We're allowed to like a fine schedule in the annual budget.
Oh, perfect. That's the best way to do it. So then you take all those ordinances from out the year. Yep, that's a great way to do it.
Sorry, one more.
Yeah.
Sorry. And that's a lot of dumb questions today.
Yeah.
So let's say we forget to send a change to DCRA, but we do to the court system. What happens in that scenario?
Nothing. You don't need to send us your stuff.
Okay.
The only stuff that is required by law that you send us is your budget. You guys are on a Aruba community. Aruba's required to send us their minutes. You send us your budget if you want capital funding. So, I think that's the only one that is required to be sent to us. And then there's a really cool thing on our website to where you could go in, and I can send it to Benji and she can send it to all of you. You go in, type in City of Palmer, it shows every grant that it's open to the public, every grant that the City of Palmer has ever received. And that all runs through our office. And if the reporting was done on that grant, it also shows the reporting for that grant. I don't want to miss any. I went too fast. So your municipal code is organized just like state statute, title, chapter, section, subsection. It's codified. We confirm that. Usually if they're online, they're codified, but I have seen some where I've went to go look and the clerk hasn't updated in 10 years. That means he or she is not codifying that code. And it is a required statute in 29, even for home rule municipalities. If you have internet, it should be published on the internet and in the city office. Ordinances, I'm not going to pull it up, but it's real important to. Here's what I talk about, like educating yourself. You walk into City Hall, you know that your ordinances for that business license we talked about is you looked. It's not online. You walk in City Hall, you don't see it anywhere. How's the public seeing that ordinance? Right? How do they even know? Because maybe they're not going to remember by last meeting. So it's real important that you take some of those pending ordinances, and if you see one, it's no big deal. You just contact the clerk and say, hey clerk, I noticed. She might be like, oh, I can't log in, the password doesn't work. Well, then can we go ahead and put 10 of them, can we go ahead and print 10 copies out and put them out front? So that when the public walks in this door, they have those ordinances to view. Oh, did I forget something there? Yep, recommend all city members have at least an electronic copy. Those are usually, you guys get packets, I assume? So you're, huh?
Layout.
You get them all electronically? Okay. I have one community that a police officer delivers them.
We used to do
Did you?
that. Long time.
Palmer did? I think that makes sense to me now because that's the first time I ever read it, so their code is probably that old. Yeah, and I was like,
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
oh, the police do?
Oh, no,
Oh.
sorry. They always did the same, because the packets are pretty large for P&Z, so they hand deliver them, where they used to mail them.
Oh.
Remember that when I was on there, they switched? Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we talked about that. So how many, I know Mayor, you probably have, you've been here a long time, council members, have either one of you searched in Title 29 or on code? Do you guys know how to do that and how quick it could be?
So can I ask a
Yeah.
question? What is RUBA? Could you kind of?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a tough one, because I've only been here 6 months.
Here.
This was on my test. So RUBA is the Rural Utility Business.
Administration? I don't know.
So what RUBA is, and I might send this to you guys and you could get them out, is I'm not familiar with RUBA. I've been tasked as a new LGS to learn it because I'm supposed to be helping you manage it. But the state government, it's the utilities. So it's a community that has utilities that they are getting federal money for water, mainly, right? So these utilities are getting federal money that's coming down through our office. They have to have an agenda and a budget adopted because we need to see that those utility monies that they've been given are part of that budget that goes right back into that drinking water for that community.
Okay,
Right?
so just to make sure.
So they have that budget. When we have a rural city that is not spending their money on water for their community, we are flying out there. So, sorry, that's just I'm not
that's-
super good with that yet, but if you type in
Oh,
RUBA,
advisor?
Rural Utility Business Advisor.
Okay.
business
Business.
advisor.
Sorry, I
Rural-
wasn't trying to
rural
correct
utility
you.
business.
Yeah, but see how easy it is to find that link? Yeah. So,
No,
I
I
mean,
just ChatGPT'd it. I didn't even look for the link. I ChatGPT'd
but, and it
the
didn't
link.
go to my page.
No, I did from the link that ChatGPT.
So when you're searching for a topic, and I apologize if this is like super easy, and I appreciate your patience, but let's go to, what do we want to use? So if we want to go to Title 29, let's just use that one. I feel like I'm having a test.
They
Resources.
also offer utility staff training and evaluation.
Yeah, we offer a lot of training. You guys, I am not going to be able to
To
put the
enhance their
pressure on.
capacity to sustain and operate critical infrastructure.
I'm just going to, I know you guys don't want to be here all day, so I'm just going to move on. But I'm going to show you.
I tried to find out how to search in code.
Well, I was going to show you how easy it is to search in your code and your statutes.
Yeah,
right?
I will say ours is pretty
Ours is
awesome.
really
Yeah.
awesome.
Title 29 is pretty easy.
Yeah.
So this one is too, right? So you're just going to go in the back. It's online. You can look up the word dog. You can look up the word election. You can look up second-class cities. You can look up home rule. You can look up home rule in this, and I'll take you to all the home rule
It's a
items.
disclaimer, but the QR code does take us to
I should have remembered all of them,
No,
but
fine.
thank you.
I'd be interested to know what Sewer's doing.
If you want to use Seward's code, you can go to that. So Palmer Charter, which section discusses council's term of office in your charter? I hope this is correct. It's section 3.2. So let's just go real quick in Palmer. So you have two sections, right? Which section discusses council terms of office? So you have that. Now, what if you get an ordinance before you that says we want to change it, what's the first thing I would do? I would look at your charter, see what it says. I would then go to your code, see what it says. Then I'll go to Alaska statutes and see if you're allowed by home rule powers to change it. So you want to make sure that you understand what's coming before you. Then you're going to have a public hearing on that ordinance. Mayor's shaking his head because you want to see if the people want that. You might firmly believe, I want a 2-year term. And then the public's going to say, no, we want 3. And so then that's when you're going to educate yourself, and that's when you're going to talk to your constituents, and we'll talk about the difference between 1 council member talking to them and 4, an open meeting act. Black Law's Dictionary definition: an authoritative law or decree, especially a municipal regulation. Palmer Municipal Code, Chapter 1, Title 1, Chapter 1, that's probably right, provides for ordinance procedures and requirements. But just because it's in that chapter, you need to make sure that you're searching for every word that says ordinance, right? Because you are procedure. Something that you're saying, I'm checking here, I'm checking here, I'm checking here. That is a responsibility. I like having these up because sometimes I get to talking and then I'm like, oh, I said that wrong, or I already said that. So sometimes, I don't know, Benji, you guys call them, you say codified? Codified? Okay. So you have a code, or we call a lot of municipal, I call it codified, but you can call it a code ordinance. It's a general and permanent nature, can be amendable. It's in effect over time, will be codified into law. A non-code, not general or permanent, specific to a moment in time, will not be codified into law. Your land use, your zoning map, those are sometimes done by non-code, right? So they're part of the law, but they're not put into they're not codified into your code book. Emergency, extreme. You know how many times as city clerk I've been asked to do an emergency ordinance, and I said, that's not an emergency. An emergency is extreme or unusual circumstances. It is a limited duration, 60 days or less. No public hearing is required. And actually, I always recommend that if that happens, and if the mayor, you have a fire, City Hall has burnt down, the mayor is saying, I've got to move funds. Right? If he has the authority, I have to double check. The mayor said, we have got to move funds from here to here because staff doesn't have computers. Staff doesn't have there. Whoever has the authority, the mayor has got to do that, even if your law says they can't. But what should happen is the next time you have a regular meeting, we ratify the decision of the mayor. The mayor says, I had to move $10,000 because our city hall burned down. I've got staff over at the city of the borough. We had to have computers. The finance director, treasurer is telling me we have no money left, and the mayor has to move that money. So what should happen is once you guys have a regular meeting, usually that's 60 days or less, the mayor's going to ask that the council ratify that decision that he made. Then if they don't, then call the state and
The manager.
the manager has that right. Okay.
With the emergency.
Hey, Mayor, just because I say you have that right doesn't mean. So, it's different from a thank you. That's the things I asked her. So if your administrator has those, what's the best for the public in that circumstance, right? What's the best? Let's think about it. Like if I had that happen, which I have had I have had an emergency during COVID, that happened to a lot of communities, right? We can no longer hold our meetings. Right now, we're shut down. So our mayor, in that case, was able to make the decision. We weren't allowed before that to have our meetings,
Zoom or?
yeah, like Zoom or, you had to be present. So the mayor made it really quick. She had to say it, and this is an emergency. Everybody, we have to have this meeting. So we can move funds for COVID. We can't be in the building. The governor shut it down. And so we did that. And then at that next council meeting, the council did decide they did not want to continue it, but they said, we are ratifying the decision of that mayor for that meeting that it was allowed. They gave her, we're okay, right? But then they said, we don't want it to continue. So you have that, who's ever given that authority, that's, yeah.
Can you just separate the difference between an emergency ordinance amendment versus a declaration of emergency? That has different impacts, often involving different funds. So they're both emergency, but they're two different topics.
Usually if there's a declaration, you're going to have, though, an emergency ordinance.
Correct, but they are separate.
Yes. But say a declaration come down, and that is one way to tell if you need an emergency. So the declaration to shut City Hall came down, right? Well, we had a meeting the next day. What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? She had to do an ordinance that allowed them to have that meeting right the next day. So she didn't have time for the public. We went ahead and we posted it on our website. We did all the things the clerk's office could. And then I did, as the clerk, actually no, I had COVID. I had COVID. The deputy clerk had to go into City Hall by herself, and she ran that meeting in City Hall by herself. And it was tough. But yes, usually, but still we had to have an ordinance because our law said, right? Our law said that we couldn't do that. And the mayor's saying, no, we have to do this. But we can't have the 5-day public hearing. We can't do this. So I agree, usually you need that emergency declaration to prove that this is an emergency.
I think a question.
Yeah.
So, not to be controversial,
Yeah.
but I mentioned that the first meeting I actually watched was the meeting where the council was considering a mask mandate for the city of Palmer during
Mask,
COVID.
okay.
And that was probably one of the longest meetings that I've ever seen, and I was on the council, yeah, I was thankful for that. But what do you do in a situation like that where, what power do the people have if they disagree with the council about an emergency situation? Because at that point, it seems to be just a differing of what you believe to be an emergency or not.
Right. So in this case, if the mandate came down from the governor that said masks are required, and the public is saying to your local government, okay, so let's say the governor said mask. What was I don't remember what the requirement was.
I think the governor had said it's a city by city.
Okay, city by city, so local governance, right? So in that case, if it was before the city council, and the city council felt that it was for the protection of employees, right? Or did they mandate for the whole city? They mandated for the whole city?
They wanted to mandate for the whole
Okay,
city.
they wanted, and did they open public testimony for that? And the public was against it or for it? Or
Majority was against it.
against it?
Yes.
And the council said yes?
They actually said no.
Okay,
So
good, because
I guess that kind of answers my question a little bit, but I mean, it could have gone either way.
It could have
So
gone
what
either
if in
way.
that case, I'm sure it happened in a bunch of cities
Yeah.
across the
So now it's different if the governor says, done. Then yes, the city has to do it. So if I had that, I think that was difficult time for all of us, right? So I think in our case, the mayor said, we're not gonna mandate masks in our community. However, we are gonna mandate masks if you walk into City Hall. We are gonna mandate masks in any city building. But we are not gonna mandate masks for the public walking down the street. Same thing I think probably the city of Palmer did. So you're educating yourself, right? You're opening those items to public hearings. What do the people want? Now, I'm not saying sometimes the people want something that isn't allowed by law, right? So especially with planning and zoning, you're gonna get a lot of testimony where I don't want that commercial building next door. But you're like, wait a minute, the due process of that applicant, right? So then we'll have that training in planning and zoning commission, but also sometimes I wanna say the public can speak, but you have to educate yourself on what the law is and what that due process is for that applicant. Because that applicant has rights. The citizens might not be happy about it. If you don't feel like you have enough information to vote, I make a motion to postpone. I make a motion to get more information unless, in certain cases, state law says, in Towers, I think it is, that the city council only has so many days. They can't make a tower, an applicant wait 2 years, right? That, they have the due process. That all goes back to educating yourself. It's a lot. I don't want you guys going home and all quitting. Don't do that, because it is a lot. Do we need a break? Let's have a break. Yeah, it's a good time. I think it is coming up next, so perfect. Break time. Whew. Benji, skip past ordinance adoption. Do we have any questions on ordinance adoptions for the city of Palmer? Do you understand the process? Or if you had a circumstance where you didn't agree with a way that an ordinance was adopted? No. Okay. Let's just kind of move. We talked a little bit how important it is to have copies. By law, you have to allow for public testimony. Okay. Resolutions is a formal expression or of an opinion, intention, or decision made by an official body. States a permanent file of resolution shall be maintained. There's a home rule limitation on that. So what that means is if you were to go read Alaska statutes in there, it's going to say, you know what, we require that of a city, but my guess is what it says is home rule doesn't have to do that. Doesn't mean you need to follow your, we talked about, oh, there's something in there. We talked about codification. I hope that everybody here has taken an oath of office. Benji, if you have not taken oath of office, have somebody give you that, the mayor or whomever needs to do that. It is important that me as a clerk, I always took an oath of office every time my contract was agreed to. So I do have some communities that their council has not done that. Duties of local, number one, you serve the public. And I thought, I can't remember your name, council member, but I thought it was an interesting thing. She asked me on break. She made a decision once that she was the tiebreaker. She didn't like the law, but she voted kind of against the public testimony, and she voted in favor of the process, right? And it broke that tie. And then what I said to her is at the end, what should happen when you do that, you state why you voted that way. I voted this way because of it's in our rules, it's in our law. However, I disagree with it. Next month, I'm introducing an ordinance to change it. You have that power, right? You have the power. Those people have spoke. Right there, they spoke. We don't like this law. We don't agree with it. You voted the right way. You said, but it is law. But we can change it. You have that right. And obviously the people spoke in that case. You represent the values, needs, and desires of Palmer residents. You're in a community, the majority of that community wants marijuana. They want something. They didn't like that law, right? In that circumstance, they did not like it. They have spoken. Yes?
Can I ask you a question? If there's people that are coming from outside of the city of Palmer residents, and then also if you have paid people that are coming to speak for the majority, then what would you?
So one thing, Benji, do you guys have a sign-in sheet?
We do.
Does that sign-in sheet include where city, like city of Palmer, city of Wasilla?
It used to could.
You can do that.
Yeah.
So, and we'll talk a little bit about Robert's rules. Is the mayor the chair? Is the mayor the chair? Does the mayor, do you give the mayor the list, and then the mayor, do you say, John Smith, you have your 3 minutes? The mayor can request, now, they can deny. The mayor can say, can you tell me what community you're from, right? It's simple things. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't listen to borough-wide, but you should listen to your community, right? That's what's important. Those are the people that elected you into office. The people that are testifying, they don't have to give their name. I would recommend possibly having it. Mayor, I would recommend, if that is a council member's request, that you should not ask that from the dais.
Oh no, I'm
Yeah,
not
okay,
asking.
yeah. Okay, but
I'm
the
just
mayor
saying,
can.
yeah. Or is there a way for us, like, because we do have Palmer proper specifically, and then the greater Palmer. So see, because
Is the Palmer proper voters of the city of Vail?
it's way smaller. So it's
You could say resident or a new resident of Palmer.
Oh, yeah, you could
We
say,
do something
yeah.
like that, I mean, and we could put that on the form.
or
In the city limits though.
What?
Sorry, in the city limits though, because people will say the residents are
Yeah.
only like
Yeah.
shop around.
There's only so much you can do with that,
Right.
right?
We can't be like, give us your address.
Yeah.
Don't do
I want to see your
Or
Right, we're implementing IDs before you.
What I mean, yeah, what I just mean is that we're not considering, of course, the desires of constituents of Wasilla are gonna be different,
Secondary at least.
yeah, than, or to benefit, other needs and desires than just the actual residents of Palmer,
Right.
proper. And so I think that's where, I think especially recently that's been happening a lot, is where they'll have people come in
Or calling us.
or calling
They won't
us
tell you where they're from.
daily and yelling at us, or people that are being paid to come in through other organizations.
Sonia, real quick, just especially a lifetime here in Palmer, and I've lived in, different areas of Palmer, but the people from around here, a lot of them have addresses that say Palmer, Alaska. They live in Butte,
Oh,
Lazy
yeah.
Mountain, Soapstone, out towards Trunk, whatever. So they don't know till they get here and see this little map that shows, here's the city of Palmer with its 6,000 residents. Here's our water service area, and here's all the people that have, if you did, everybody who had a 99645
Right.
zip code and a Palmer address, you'd be talking 30,000 people. And the people still, generally, people don't say, hey, where do you live? I live in Lazy Mountain. They say, I live
Right.
in Palmer. I live in
Yeah.
Soapstone. They say,
And
I live in
especially during a
Palmer.
meeting, they're not
So I
going
think
to do that.
it's, in my 3 years on council, and I think I like this, it's a come one, come all.
Yeah.
Everybody testify, whether you live one block out of Palmer, whether you live across the street from City Hall, whether you live on Soapstone. Come tell us what your thoughts are, regarding our library that 80% of non-Palmer.
And that's
folks use.
another way to look at it, right? So when you're coming to vote on something, so
Right.
say the question is, the actual item that you're voting on that is going to affect City of Palmer residents, right? Are most of those phone calls you getting on legislation in front of you, or is it a complaint on something general?
Oh no, it's not, it's in front of us.
It's in front of you? That one's tough, I'm gonna have to think about that one. What you're gonna wanna do is honestly listen to everybody, right?
Yeah, oh,
Even
yeah.
if they haven't elected you. And then, I'm gonna have to think about that one, that's a good question. And I know what happens a
And
lot.
to add on to that, a lot of that is just the natural dynamic of the elected officials, right? You are held accountable by the people, and so you listen to them, and so that's just the natural dynamic of elections, and elected officials, so.
The borough, it happens a lot at, because they're by assembly, right? So people get confused, which assembly member do you call?
Sure.
And, so same, sometimes they'll say, well, are you on my thing? But then I have seen assembly members get enough phone calls that they go talk to that assembly member and say, I'm getting 100 phone calls, you need to consider what you can do for your district. So that's a good question, and I'm sorry I don't have a clear answer for you on that.
I just wanted to clarify, we really do want to listen to everybody, but it's just like when something is more specific, like, I don't know, property tax or something
Right.
really like that, where it is going to specifically affect the residents of this in the city limits, then it's more confusing. We're hearing voices from all over.
And unfortunately, there is no way for
Yeah.
you to do that, but no way that I would recommend, right? I'm not gonna recommend that you look up the vote. Right. I'm not gonna recommend that.
We had an issue one time, the fairgrounds, they would shoot off fireworks, late at night. And the fairgrounds are in city limits, and the city has a noise ordinance. But there are residents that live near the fairgrounds that aren't Palmer residents, and they came in and were complaining about the noise.
The noise.
Now, me, I felt that we should listen to them
That's a
because
good point.
we had an ordinance for noise, and the fairgrounds was in city limits, but these people weren't.
I do like that, because in that case, you're right. They're still being affected by a law that you guys created,
Yeah.
right? They're not city residents, but that is an extremely good point. They're on that boundary. You guys have created a law that is affecting somebody in that next to, outside of that. So that's a great point. You would have to listen to them in that case. It wouldn't matter if they're a resident or not. That's a good point. Really good point. It's affecting, even though they're not city residents, but is affecting them. So in this case, right, you're serving the public, you're going to represent the value, needs, and desires of Palmer residents or people that your laws are affecting, right? That law is affecting those people. So we're going to just go through these real quick. You adopt a budget, thank goodness. You provide services, you regulate the activities, you run regular meetings, and you levy taxes. These are some of the things that you can do. Develop policies, procedures, establish election procedures. And I'm going to talk about that shortly, but I'm going to ask the council not to get carried away with this topic with me, okay? We can do that on another day. Acquire, manage, control, use, dispose of real or personal property. Hide or confirm personnel. Hide. Hire. Provide for fines and penalties, which I showed you that. Establish, alter, abolish municipal departments. Establish election procedures. When I say that, I mean that you have put it in your code. You have established, and actually, I'm going to ask the commissioner, I'm going to change that word to procedure to policy. You have adopted the policy. You've adopted the policy that the clerk must follow. You've adopted the policy of when people can vote. You do not get involved with the process, right? You adopt the policy. If you don't like the policy, change the policy. You are policy makers. In that case where you had to vote because the law said that, change the policy because you have the right to do that. You're financial managers, you're personnel managers, you're ombudsmen. You're going to go talk to your community. You're going to listen to them. You're going to hear what they have to say. Your utility managers, your planners, your lobbyists, you're going to AML. You're lobbying for your city. Deliberate delegation is the key. Okay, so, that's a horrible slide. So there's your org chart. So hopefully everybody can see it.
It's correct on the next slide too. It's a little bit better.
Is it?
It's kind of the same.
Yeah.
Did it print out? So I'm going to show you Cordova's slide because I am going to make a recommendation to the city of Palmer. And I want to see if you guys can see what it is. So you have up here mayor, city council, we already changed that. You have interim city manager, city attorney. You no longer have Shelley Atkinson as the clerk, so we need to change that. And you guys have names. See that? You see how the city clerk goes over here, the deputy city clerk. So I'm going to pull up the city of Cordova's, and I want to see. I'm already giving you guys like homework to do. Oh goodness. Sorry. Let's see desktop.
Yeah, because we can't read it from here and read it on the chart, so you're not the only one of us can.
Oh yeah, that org chart. Yeah. Where do you guys have that org chart listed on the website? Is it on the website?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe it is.
Good. Oh, I'm not on my computer. I can't pull up the city of Cordova.
I can look it up.
That's okay. We're going to just talk about it. That's what they have as the number one thing on their org chart. The people should be on your org chart. It's number one. You can call it citizens. You can call it city voters. But the people should be the number one up above the city council. City of Cordova has an excellent org chart. If we are recommending an org chart to the a community, we have that is the number one thing. You have the city council, mayor. Obviously it's going to be a little bit different for every community. So the people elect on that org chart. That's how you get your city council. You guys don't. The city elect the mayor. It's not elected by the council, right? Okay. Some communities the council elects the mayor, and then you have the manager, clerk, city staff. And of course, this can be arranged however your community. We've talked a lot about how to be effective. We're studying, we're preparing, we're listening, we're contributing. Come to your meetings. Request and read your packets. They're sent electronically, Benji. They're on the
For the
website.
most part, we do have a couple of council members that
The want them by paper.
And we provide those by paper.
Okay. Do they come in and pick it up?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
pretty good at that.
Don't be a single issue member. You ran for city council usually because of a single issue, but now you no longer have that authority to be a single issue member. You don't get to vote, pick and choose when you get to vote. We're going to talk about taking part in debate. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in the Roberts Rules. Debate, but don't fight. We're going to talk about that. Don't micromanage. When I say micromanage, I'm talking about back to that org chart. If the deputy clerk is under the clerk, who is in charge of the clerk?
The council.
The council? Okay, so it's the manager or administrator.
But the deputy is kind of hybrid. She's also the city manager and admin.
Okay.
And then the clerk's office. So it's a balance.
Okay. But if you had a city clerk right now, could you as an individual council member, well, you don't have, could you go to the deputy clerk and direct the deputy clerk to do something? Absolutely not. We're just, that we all understand that you cannot micromanage those departments, right? You don't like a policy, you don't like the way something's being done, then your role as a council member is to learn how to create an ordinance to change the law. Because the clerk's office and any other office, they're going to follow the policy, they're going to create their own procedures, and then they're going to create a tax, right? So if you see the procedure of something and you don't like it, and you disagree, unless that procedure is conflicting with that policy, you really don't have a say in the procedure. You have a say in the policy, right? And you can go to that person and say, I don't like this procedure. And he or she's gonna say, well, it matches the policy, so what does that mean? Change the policy. Change the policy. The staff can't do that, but you can. Know all sides of the issues. I really like that comment. I didn't think about that, right? So in that case, the fireworks, I'm from the city of Houston. I served them for 10 years. I know some fireworks complaints, okay? I've heard them. And so, they did listen to other people, right? The fireworks stands are open. City's saying, keep them open, fire chief. Everybody else is saying, we are on fire. Shut them down, right? I heard public testimony like that. So then the city heard that, and they said, shut it down. And they weren't City of Houston residents. So that's a good point. In some cases, you want to listen to how that law that the City of Houston is only, I think, 2 in the state that is allowed to sell fireworks. But how does that affect the city of Palmer? It can, right? Now, you as a council member should go talk to a council member first and say, hey, can we do something about this? Rely on facts. Rely on your law, not opinions. Rely on the law. But the law can be changed. Maintain good relations with staff. How that can be done. Maintain good relations with staff. Listen to them, but also let them know that you are the policy makers, right? You are the policy makers. So a good staff member also, though, when I left the city, and I didn't realize I did, I was there with 15 years. When I left the city, I had 2 or 3 council members say, we never knew how Sonia felt. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. And they're right. I worked at the borough. When I left the borough, the assembly said the same thing. I never knew how she felt. So if I completely disagreed with something we don't have a lot of employees in here, as a clerk, you are neutral. They should never know how you feel. They come into my office. I think in probably the 20 years, I might have said how I felt 2 times to a council member or mayor, how I really felt about something, and that's usually when I was walking out the door. And I said, I cannot continue this, and just how I feel. And, I had family changes too. So maintain good relations with staff. Listen to them, but if you're educated yourself, then you know when a policy needs to be changed. We talked about the importance of your titles, your charter, your code. Share information. I'm not sure why that's in there, because then share information. So That's gonna be like, not sharing information with each other, because we're gonna talk about what that looks like, but share information with your community, right? In the case where you talked about that, you making a statement. Robert's Rules actually does, there is a section there that talks about when you vote no, you should state why you voted no, right? That's the best policy. Why did you vote no? Did you vote no because it's the law? Did you vote no because you disagree with it? Did you vote no because the ordinance isn't ready? Why did you personally vote no? Why did you vote yes?
Can we elaborate on how everyone came to that?
Yeah, let's get to Robert's Rules. You're gonna ask the questions. When do you guys ask questions? So let's say the ordinance, it's introduced, you have it. When do you guys normally think, when's the best time to ask a question?
Usually a staff report.
Good.
They ask, not always, but there's usually a staff report, and then staff comes up and then the council would ask questions and stuff.
So this is one of those gray areas where I always think it's the best, if you have a strong mayor, you're gonna go to the mayor or the department head, and in your guys' case, the manager. You're gonna go to the city manager, you're gonna ask them. But let's imagine that, I always liked it when the council would come to me if it was, Sonia, this ordinance, it's the wrong wording over here, it's all messed up, right? And I'd be like, let me get an amendment together for you. But let's say the ordinance has been introduced by this council member, and you have went and talked to him on separate occasions. You have went and talked to him, you. Maybe two haven't, because they're out fishing. And you walk away and you're like, that makes perfect sense. Yes, I agree. Yes, I agree. Yes, that is an open meeting act violation, even though you one at a time did it. Because you have come to a conclusion based on a conversation outside of the meeting, right? So that's a gray area, because law says 3 or 4. And we're going to talk about, like what you said about when the exceptions as well. So we want to ask questions, but we also want to be mindful that those questions, so let's say that did happen, you know what I would recommend at that next council meeting? City of Cordova and a few other cities, I think it's a phenomenal idea. Approval of the agenda. Second item on the agenda is ex parte communication and financial disclosure. It's on every agenda. And the mayor goes, is there any ex parte communication or financial disclosures that anybody needs to state? They state it right there. I went and talked to council member, I forgot your name. Maybe we should have those up.
Right?
And he let me know that he introduced this ordinance because of X, and I agree with him. You have just now fixed that ex parte communication. That is. But I like that some of the communities have it on their agenda because it's not a scary thing. It's fixable. I've had a council member told me in the meeting, he said, how did he say that? Oh yeah, we had that rezone. I drove out to the property. No, he told me outside of the meeting. I drove out to the property and I talked to the landowner and I was like, whoa. So you know how we fixed it? The next meeting, I said you need to declare it, and it did, and everybody was cool. It was fine. So ask questions, but be mindful if that discussion with that council member has changed your mind or had you make a decision, that should be declared at the time of the vote.
Wait, so let's go back, can we circle back to when they vote no on something, how they would, how and why they would say?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So Robert's Rules, right? We want to be pretty clear when we're debating, and we do have some slides on Robert's Rules, but okay. The ordinance is read, ordinance blah, 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 blah. Usually the mayor will ask the council member who has sponsored that ordinance to make the motion. I make the motion to adopt ordinance 2703. Second, you do not have to agree to second. You are saying, yep, I want to discuss this. Usually what happens is the person that should happen, some gray areas, if your code says different, do different, your charter says, that person would say, I think we should adopt it because of this. This deputy mayor, I would like to speak to this ordinance. You say why you don't like it, right? Thank you, we're done. Any other questions? Back. Robert's rules actually only says 2 times. However, I have not ever worked in a city who has followed that law, so.
If I may,
Yeah.
just to make sure I understand that. So in our process, it tends to be the city manager puts forth a lot of administrative
Okay,
actions or something like that, so the mayor, would read it. There's either the public hearing or that's the second one, or however that, and then there's a staff report where the council's asking questions. So are you suggesting that they, during the time of asking questions in the staff report, they should also give their opinion of how they're going to be voting at that
oh,
time?
no,
Okay.
not, so,
Just wanted to clarify.
so is the motion on the floor when they are talking to the administrator?
Generally.
Sometimes.
Generally. Very.
Okay,
Sometimes
so-
it's not, 'cause it's just
Sometimes
brought
it's
up.
not, so usually what should happen is Robert's rules is for this body. So, Mayor, ordinance 2102, department administrator, please come up and give your staff report. There's no motion yet. That person is not allowed to be part, just like the public, cannot be part of that discussion, right?
But they can be asked questions,
Before.
Before.
right?
Before, they should. Now, I'm not saying at a certain point, if you guys are getting frustrated because you need to ask more questions, what would be the proper motion?
Withdraw the motion.
You could do that, or you could say, you know what, I'm done. I make a motion to refer this back to the manager to answer my question. And I want it in a report, right? So, because what can happen is, if he gives his thing, or she now, I guess, she would give her thing and her speech. She sits down, and then up here, we now have a motion to approve. Or you don't like the report, you don't think there's enough information in it. I make a motion that we refer this back to the city manager to give us more information. At any time, you can make that motion. You get a second. If that's the problem right there, right, then that means that staff report or that report that that person gave you is not enough information for you to make a vote on. Yeah.
So just to confirm, so let's say there's a staff report, Josh doing haircut's terrible, they do that, and I go, well, I don't agree with that. I want to refer back to the city manager to come back with that. That would table it to the next meeting. Is that
We
correct?
don't, tabling kills a motion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sorry,
So
what I
postpone.
meant was it
Yeah.
would postpone to the next
Yeah.
meeting. Okay.
Easy, I postpone,
Oh, no, he's asking, will the impact of you bringing the mayor
Yeah.
manager back
Oh.
cause a postponement?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And usually though, but when you make a motion to refer, you want to make it really clear. Why are you referring it? So then that staff member has direction, right? You're not just referring it, or postpone. I like the word refer if you are asking somebody to make an action. You are saying, city manager, I want this and I want it by this day. You make it very clear, I want this by this day. Now, if you're saying I want to postpone because council member Smith isn't here and I want his opinion, that would just be a motion to postpone. And I would say, because I want council member Smith's opinion on this. So yeah, so no, when that person is giving that report, there should be no motion on the table. Because they're not, that's reserved for the city council, right? That would just, so why wouldn't like a public member be able, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
now work sessions can be a little different, like you're doing a budget. That's why in a work session, it says city council and city staff. That is the committee of the whole, right? This is a work session. It's DCRA. I would have probably put my name on that, and I would have probably put the term council roles and responsibilities. So the public knows Sonia Kevin from DCRA is giving a training on council roles and responsibilities, and that's all we're talking about today. So yeah, so then the manager sits down. If there's nobody that sponsored it, the person who makes the motion should be in favor of it. I make a motion to adopt, or I make a motion to, we're not ready. I make a motion to refer that, to postpone it, whatever you want to do. Second, and then you could have a debate then. You could say, you know what, I have more questions. I have more questions. I don't understand this. We need more information. Because I guess if you look at it that way, the public that is not attending that meeting, guess what do they have? The staff report. That's all they have. So, that's kind of the thought process behind that. Yeah.
Can I ask a clarifying
Yeah.
question? Okay, so what we have now is at the beginning of our agendas, it says, like, right after we, adopt the agenda or accept the agenda or whatever, then we have the the mayor's report, the city manager's report, and the city clerk's report. Okay, so, and the city attorney's report. So at that time then is when we sometimes then ask questions or have concerns about these items, but then also when we're moving along in the agenda, we make a motion, like the mayor makes a motion to, amend or, resolution, and then move to approve second. And then that's when the city manager or whoever would then call somebody up, and then we'd all be discussing it with that person, and then we would move to a vote.
How the Matsu Borough does it, so same, you have your reports, they're gonna talk, and it's a general, usually, general discussion. So then, the ordinance is on the next item, the mayor's gonna say ordinance 2707, do we have a staff member here to report on this? That staff member's gonna walk up.
Okay.
That staff member's gonna give a report. Those city council members at that time, the mayor can allow questions, right?
Okay.
So you still can ask. The motion to approve or to adopt is reserved for right here,
Okay.
right? You kind of see what I'm saying? Once this happens, who owns it? City manager no longer owns that. They own it before the motion, so they could be like, blah, blah, blah. The mayor can say, council members, do you have any questions of the ordinance? Yes, no, all of it should happen right there. The administrator sits down. You guys are like, not voting on it. You guys have made that maybe up in your mind, because you'll have enough information based on your questions, then the motion happens. Once that motion happens, it's reserved to this body. Yep. I have seen it where they do ask advice from the attorney or the clerk, right? So how that would look, and it's usually a parliamentary issue or a legal issue. Because the attorney didn't give a staff report. Right? Neither did the clerk. So the council at that point can say, Mayor, can I ask a question of the attorney regarding the legality of this ordinance? That is okay. As long as the mayor says, are there any objections to Councilmember Smith asking the question? But no, that once they sit down, they are done. The clerk or whomever, they should not have. That's best practice.
So then the motion's on it, they vote on the motion, and what time do they get the opportunity to clarify their no vote? Because
Anytime.
usually there's like a roll call, and then often the comments on why they voted, like, is, then they're moving on to the next issue, is reserved for council comments. But
Usually-
then so much stuff has already happened at that point, and it doesn't address. So, do you have a recommendation of when they can clarify why they
During the debate. So during the debate, right, granted, as long as there's public hearing, that you've heard the public, during the debate, you could simply say, I have listened, and I've listened to the administrator manager comments, I've listened to the public, I will be voting no on this item because I do not feel it's in the best interest of the city of Palmer. Roll call, no. Like this. Goes in the minutes, right? There's your motion. At the end, they can also do it. I vote yes, because I do believe this is in the best interest. I vote to postpone because we're not ready. We don't have enough council members, whatever it is, right? Those minutes are for the public that cannot attend. So if you vote no and the public never knows why you voted no, they're going to be upset if they think it should be yes. But they might ask the clerk for the minutes and say, she voted no because it's the law. And then they might come to you and say, I want to change the law. So yeah, during debate, I had a really good council member that did that every time. I will vote no because of this. I am going to vote yes because of this. You can't make a council member do that, but it is best practice, right? It's clear. Why are they voting that
I'm
way?
sorry, just
Yeah.
to clarify, so that would not be during vote, because I have heard at other meetings where people go, like, for example, I'm voting yes under duress. I've heard that kind of thing, and
Yeah, you can say that during debate.
but I mean, during the roll call vote.
No, during the roll call vote, you should literally say yes or no.
Okay, that's it.
Yes or
Okay.
no. Because you should have made that statement right. You could make that statement right before. But once the mayor calls the roll call vote, it's yes or no. Or, yes or no. But if you're not ready to make the vote, you have the right to do something else. If you need to ask the clerk, say, I'm not ready, Mayor, I need to ask the clerk or I need to ask the attorney, do that right then. Don't make a vote that you're not ready to vote on. Make sure you have it, that you feel comfortable. Unless it's an applicant of something that has a time limit, right? So if there's a tower, I'm not sure what your code is, but we did one time at the city get in a lot of trouble because the council kept postponing an application and we got fined because we went outside of that person's due process. Your ethics, these are all pretty common. I'm sure you guys understand all of these. Prohibits public officials from using positions to secure employment or contracts except to receive solicit compensation except from the city. All of those things for where you get paid should be in your code or your charter. Use city goods for own personal, political, financial gain. Use city goods for partisan, political purposes, accept gifts intended to influence actions or judgments, and properly use or disclose of information. Has anybody, and I've had this happen, so I'm okay, it's okay if you're not comfortable sharing. I've had a couple of things happen. So one time with the marijuana for the city of Houston, the city of Houston was, I think, the second community in the state of Alaska to allow marijuana. Very new. So I had come into my office one day, I have all these marijuana gifts. And I'm like, whoa. So I threw them all away, and I let the council know that somebody thought it was so kind to give me some gifts because they thought that was great for all the work. That is improper, right? It is improper if you get I don't know. But if it makes you feel funny, that's why I always say, like, it's probably improper. If it doesn't make you feel right taking something, then it probably isn't.
What do you call it, John, the sniff test?
What is it? Oh, yeah. If it don't pass, then yeah, it probably isn't.
Yeah.
If it happens, you can fix it. You declare it. You declare it. Your code might even talk to that. Some codes do. They have an ethics. I don't know if yours does. Does it have an ethics? Maybe.
No, I mean,
Yeah, and some communities say $50, 500, substantial. That's always a fun word.
right.
It would be good, I think it would be good to clarify because I think like sometimes, like a lot of times for me specifically, it's like a constituent or a business owner will ask me to coffee or something and then they'll be like, oh, I already ordered your coffee. You know what I mean? And then it's like, so then do I hand them $5 or is it like, you see what I'm saying?
You go to coffee away and you tell them thank you.
Okay. Okay.
And you explain why,
Okay.
right? Because what citizen over here now sees that person handed you that cup of coffee, and I'm just saying, and then that next meeting you come in, and maybe that person is no when 50 other people are saying yes, and you go no.
Okay.
You throw the coffee away and you explain, I cannot accept that.
Okay.
I turned down the City of Houston bonuses one time because the council didn't adopt it in their budget. And believe me, I was not a popular person because the city council, the mayor, says, I'm giving every employee $100. Christmas bonus, $100. And I said, Madam Mayor, we cannot take $100. She's like, well, why? And I said, because the council didn't approve that. It's not in the budget. There was a big fat zero under gifts. Now I said, you could go to the council, the next council meeting, and do an ordinance and say, I want to transfer $500, right? So yeah, coffee, I know it's a small thing, but it's how it's
And I was
perceived.
just coming up with that. As
Yeah,
I-
no,
I was just
she's like,
saying
it wasn't
as
me.
an exception. As
No.
I have one in front of me, no, I was just
No.
saying like, as
It's
an
a
example of something cheap that a lot of people
Yeah,
get in
and,
those
you know,
positions with.
I used to be in that situation all the time with the governor's office, and,
Yeah.
and they at the time said $25, right?
$25, yep.
So, you know, different things, but I wasn't comfortable doing any of it, so it was like this constant maneuvering of like, great,
It's
I'll
always
get there
best.
before you, and figuring out the cheap different meal. or
That's
calling your
true.
mom,
If your
or-
code
or just
allows,
getting there and that and being just like, hey, you know, you can't.
I don't
And
like
maybe
it.
that's something we should look at specifying, clarifying in ours eventually is, yeah, I don't mean to be talking about.
No,
it, but
they're
it's
good.
like-
This is why I'm here.
It is silent to that, to my knowledge, yeah.
You guys do, I don't have it in front of me, but I did look it up. You guys do have a conflict of interest. You have adopted one. Like I talked about, City of Cordova's code, right up there on the agenda. Mayor asked for them, declare it. Let's talk a little bit about how this works. I actually just gave this training to local government specialists, and they were like, oh, it's that easy? That easy. So this one is substantial financial interest. Who gets to decide what, yes?
I know there's a City of Wasilla council member whose dad owns a construction company, so quite often the city is awarding contracts to her father's construction company. So I know they just have almost a very simple statement that Councilmember Rubio gives me for every AM that involves that. It just says, I don't have any, my father's business, there's no conflict of interest, blah, 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 and then they move.
Yep. So what's gonna happen for substantial is, you come to the clerk maybe before the meeting or the attorney and you say, I might have a substantial financial interest. Well, the attorney or the clerk don't get to decide that. I would recommend the motion to you. I would say, if I was the motion, I said, well, it's real easy. At the beginning of the agenda or when the mayor is saying that item on the agenda, just say, Mayor, I might have a conflict of financial interest. And the mayor's, if you guys don't have the amount in your code, and that council member is like, hey, if we adopt this, my wife works for the school board. You guys don't have school board powers, I'm thinking assembly, but let's just roll with that. My wife is gonna get a $100 Christmas bonus. Is that substantial? The mayor's gonna think about it and he's gonna say, no, I think that this question is more important than that $100. I say that you do not, so that presiding officer is gonna rule, and the decision may be overridden by a council majority. So council members declared it, $100. If we do this, my wife works for the school board, she's gonna get a $100 Christmas bonus. Mayor says, nope, you need to vote. I do not think it is a substantial financial interest. You are gonna say, I think it is. I override your decision. Then you say, call for the question. And then that's it. If they say no, backwards in my head, it's been a minute since I sat in the dais, but that's how that rolls. That easy. I got a cup of coffee, and then pretty soon I'm realizing that I am talking to Councilmember Joe's wife about legislation coming forward. Oh, even better, talking to an applicant's wife. They have informed me of something that the rest of the council doesn't know. That's not a conflict of interest, but you're going to declare that the same way that's coming up. So I'm gonna say, I think this bottom one, the member may still participate in the debate and all other votes before the council. That I have seen a lot of ordinances, and I'm not sure what yours says, but a lot of times if that financial interest is ruled, that council member is asked to leave the room. They are not allowed in debate. Alaska statutes allows for it, But most communities that I've worked for, that person literally gets out the room and leaves the room. And then they're called back in. So you'd have to pay attention to what your code says on that. And or if it doesn't, make the motion. I don't want this person in the room when we debate this. Let the council decide.
Can I ask you a question
Yeah.
about that? So do you think that that would include if, for instance, my husband and I bought a piece of property and knowing that some kind of city expansion was gonna happen, but we put it in my husband's name because I'm on the council, knowing that then the city would have to buy that property back. Do you see what I'm saying?
That's
And then
it.
I would we would still together make money off of that. So then I would think it wouldn't be correct to say, oh, well, it's my husband's property, so,
Correct. You are correct. You are living in that home.
okay. Or
That-
we own, or the piece of property
Right.
usually, okay.
If it's
Usually immediate family.
It is, however, I've seen where a mayor and a boyfriend, the boyfriend owned the business, the marijuana business. They they cut the taxes, so all marijuana businesses now got more money.
Mhm.
She declared it. The deputy mayor ruled that she could not vote, and the council agreed. They weren't married, however, they said, yes, that could be considered a financial interest. And they weren't married. They lived in the same household. They had lived together for a lot of years.
So our code says may not participate in official action, assuming that there should also include debate, but that's a little.
That's
gray,
probably
and we
something we should
probably-
clear up.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yep. May not, so that
Because
doesn't.
the order, it's confusing whether or not they can engage in debate the way this is written.
Why shouldn't they and why should they? I think I can see reasons for both ways. You guys would need to decide for yourselves. Conflict of interest, we kind of talked a little bit about that. It's not unusual. It happens all the time. Not all involve substantial financial interest, right? Some conflicts may only appear to be improper, like the coffee, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's not, but it appears. How do you want the public to see that? Some may only seem to lead to an unfair advantage. Guiding principles, if you're not sure, declare it. Just say it. Then it's up to the mayor council to decide. In all the years that I've been asked by a council member if I thought it was a substantial financial interest or conflict of interest, every time I said, let the council decide. Every time. It's not my, I always hated, well, maybe, well, don't ask me. I'm just telling you, you need to go declare it.
Would you recommend declaring it even if you decline? Is it just so it's out there?
Yes,
or?
yes,
Oh,
yeah, because let's think about it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe 2 minutes for the mayor to say, and all you've done is and it's in the minutes, right? Just, it's better to be transparent, 100%. I did I had to prove a marijuana license once because that was my job, like to get it to the council. I got married and I had done this marijuana license for 15 years, one of them. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, my husband's aunt and uncle own this business. All of a sudden I was like, darn. So I went to the mayor and I said, Mayor, I've done this 50 million times and all of a sudden I just realized, and she said, okay, Sonia, I am going to have the deputy clerk make this decision, right? She made that decision right there, and at that council meeting, declare it, say what happened, and I did. Because there's public out there that know that my boyfriend's husband, or now husband, owned the marijuana business. And the mayor said Sonia did not make the determination on this license. The deputy clerk did. Voting whether to ban commercial fishing near Palmer. Why are these one member? Oh my goodness.
Activity or something.
Yeah.
One member
Has a fishing business. Oh my goodness. These are painful. Member declares the potential conflict and the mayor decides yes, yes. Member doesn't vote unless council overrides and or leads the room. Voting whether to spend money on beach cleanup. One member has a beach on the house. Member declares the potential, hey, my beach's house is gonna get cleaned up. Conflict, and the mayor decides, no. Member must vote. Members are only required to declare. The mayor ultimately decides, unless you're like the municipality of Anchorage where they have a chair, right? Like, so when I use the word, the mayor can always, the key word is substantial. The mayor and gets to decide ex parte. I do want to talk about, it's not in the slide. What happens, anybody heard the rule of necessity before? Beach cleanup. Let's just say the beach cleanup. Only council members live on that beach. Only council members live on that beach. It's a beach cleanup, council members only live on that beach. And maybe this funding so maybe this isn't something you guys decided, maybe it's a bad example, but the state says we're cleaning up all beaches and you guys just all happen to live on that beach. You're gonna declare it, and Robert's rule says the vote of necessity is you all have the same conflict. Right? Seniors, a lot of times with the senior exemption, right? They all have, if you're all seniors, you all have a conflict of interest. If the Matson Borough allows for that exemption for seniors, I ran into this once and pretty soon they're like, well, I'm a senior. My taxes should be low. I'm a senior. It's a rule of necessity. You have to vote. All of you. Nobody gets excused.
We all have the same conflict.
You all have the same conflict.
I keep saying, there's the word potential conflict. What about an appearance of a conflict?
I think that could be a potential conflict. I guess who decides? Is it the public that decides it's a potential one? Is it, just declare it and let the mayor decide?
If there's an appearance of a conflict.
I would. But, because at that point, the appearance is you deciding whether there is or not. You're saying maybe it's just the appearance of it, right? But maybe a public member saw that and you could state that in your statement. I think this is just an appearance, and the reason I think this is because of X. I just took a cup of coffee from a person. So I think it's always better to declare for the view of the people. However, hopefully, if you said that and the mayor said, yeah, vote, or no, you can't vote, and you disagree with that, you're like, wait a minute, I declared it, but I really didn't think you were going to vote no. Hopefully everybody else on this, when you declared it and you said that, hopefully the council would support you in that and they would override that vote. So I don't want to ever tell council members what to do. I'm just saying what I would recommend for transparency. And coffee's maybe I should use something else other than coffee, but it depends.
Well, like the example of the houses, if they all own the houses on the beach, that gives the appearance that there's a conflict.
That sure does.
Even if, the state's coming through and they're cleaning up everything.
Mm-hmm. So they need to declare it. And then at that point, the clerk should state, well, wait a minute, you all have it. So now you all have to vote. It's the rule of necessity. You guys have to vote. Because if five, or actually if four of you have that, right? Because you need...
There would be a quorum.
Yeah, you would have to have, the rule of necessity is that you have to vote on that. So it's clear as mud, right?
Yeah, and I was going to talk about this in the next meeting, but this is kind of maybe a weird example. It's almost opposite of that. But so, for example, I own an IT consulting business here in town. Palm PD called me up and asked me, hey, could you help with some network issues we're having? And I said, no, because there'd be conflict, because I'm on, it just looks bad. But they still need some help. And so they asked, well, could we have a router to test out with? I said, yeah, here you go. I gave them a router to use, which I don't have any gain. It's actually the opposite of actually, it's losing. But, and that happened very recently, but I just wanted to,
You just declare it.
just declare it.
Just declare it. Because, okay,
So let's elaborate on that
Yeah.
a little bit,
Yeah.
okay, because Palmer's small, and we have limited resources. So if you do own a business, and let's say the Palmer PD needs something, or there's an RFP, so it's like, walk them through, if you own a private business as a council member, but you wanna apply for the RFP process
Oh,
as a business in that, because maybe there's only 2 in the whole area that does it. How can they and how would they?
I don't think you guys can. You have to check
I
your
would say I don't
code.
think so either, but I just wanted to.
It just looks bad.
I think
That's why I said no. I was like, yeah.
I don't, you guys would need to check your code, because
That's
I'm
what I-
almost positive. I've been reading a lot of codes lately, but, I'm almost positive that if it's for a contract, right, that, I'm almost positive that's in there. We have an assembly member that, owned a construction business, and believe me, right, it is tough.
Yeah.
But check your code on that, make sure, but I'm almost positive for contracts for a builder or any kind of business. You can't, but I'm not gonna say for sure. Ex parte contact when someone, and we'll talk a little bit about your question that we talked about earlier on this one. When someone who wants something from the governing body contacts a council member outside of the public forum to offer information and gain the member's support. You are responsible for hearing all residents' concerns, but all information gained should be public information, and you must be sure to hear all sides before making a decision. What should you do? Solutions. You're going to ask the person to share the info with the council. So you met with a person called you up, said, I am super unhappy about this, blah, blah, blah. You have one side, right? I would say, you know what, come share that with the whole council. Come share that with the whole council. If they don't, share the info yourself. You don't have to say the name, I talked to a constituent, they are unhappy about this because of X, right? If the info is in writing, distribute to the council. What that should say is give it to the clerk, distribute it to the council. Seek opposing viewpoints. How many times have you guys had public testimony where they're all one way? Does that happen very often? Does it really? Well, that says a lot. But usually you don't. Usually it's a mix, right? Usually it's a mix. So you come in kind of knowing how you're going to vote, but the purpose of that public testimony is to hear things that maybe you haven't heard outside of that public meeting, right?
So can I ask you a question? So share the info yourself. Would that be once we put the motion
Yes.
on the table and we're having the conversation just amongst the council before the vote?
Yep.
Okay.
The motion, it's been seconded. Mayor, can I speak to ordinance 2706? I had a discussion with a citizen regarding this ordinance. They brought up this point. Therefore, I feel yes or no.
Or that we should postpone
Or
to
that we should
consider the
postpone it.
information.
The public doesn't have enough information. The agenda wasn't posted in time. Lots of reasons, right? Whatever that concern is. Remember that if it's important for you to hear, it is important for all to hear. So the attorney asked me earlier about, and I don't think we have a slide on serial communications, but Benji, I'm looking at you. It is super important, even if the email to the council is administrative, BCC the council, okay? So what that happens when you get an email and you're CC'd on it, and it's coming from the attorney or the clerk's office or whomever, and you reply, and you forget to only reply to the city clerk or the city manager or that, and you've replied to everybody. So my example was I had a community call me last week, a council member, and said, Sonia, I just got in trouble from the clerk because she sent out the question to the whole council, how we want our pay stubs. Do we want our pay stubs by email or do we want them dropped in our box? I replied, because she had all the council in the tube, and said, I want mine dropped in the box. And the clerks came back and said, this could possibly be an OMA violation. And then she said, how how could it be an OMA violation? Because it is something that we have not voted, it's not a legislative action, right? That's what we all do. It's administrative, right? Simple. However, what if one of those council members said, you know what, we need to create a policy next month, and said, I introduce an ordinance next month that says we all get our pay stubs. Now it is no longer administrative, and you guys have all just put how you want that. It happened before, so even on something simple, so the best way to fix that, BCC the council.
Yes, and generally when I BCC to the council, I don't know if you guys have noticed, I actually put a little blurb at the bottom that says
Yeah.
the BCC has been utilized and this has been sent to the following people. So also you guys know that I sent it to all of you,
Good
but
idea.
that you can't accidentally hit reply all.
So sometimes in our mind, we think it's administrative, and it is, that's an administrative question, but it could turn to where it's no longer one, really quick, like,
Sorry,
Yeah.
taking a lot of time.
no,
If,
you're okay.
So if that happened, would the solution that be, when the legislation introduces, say, to tell the story, to say.
Tell the
we-
story.
Okay.
Tell the story. And hopefully from that that change would happen. If you get an email from your attorney, your manager, your acting city clerk, and it has all of you on it, the first thing you should do is just reply to that person, and then I will talk to that person as a council member, say, in the future, could you please make sure that we are all BCC'd on that email?
Yeah, I was just talking to her about serial communications earlier, just to give context for that, and it was like one of the concerns was when, there was a communication with that, and I had a conversation with him, can't we just BCC? And at the time, it seemed like that wasn't a good practice, but she was preferring, so I was like.
I think it's a
love
great practice.
this with the BCC, because it's so much easier.
I think it's a
Yeah,
good
and
one.
especially with Mitch's adding at the bottom.
And that's a great idea, I didn't have that, but then you know all the council. But you do also want to be careful if a clerk or anybody ever sends you an email where it's considered a polling vote too, right? That, not really a polling vote, it's very administrative. However, if, council, do you think that we should have our, council, the legislation, that resolution that Councilmember Joe wants all of our things to be by pay stubs. How do you guys feel about that? What day do you want that on? That is now a serial meeting, and you have created an Open Meetings Act violation. I'm not going to talk too much about nepotism and cronyism, because we did talk a little bit favoritism to family. I'm struggling a lot with very rural communities because guess what? Everybody's related.
Yeah.
Believe me, it blows my mind. Because then I'm trying to talk to them like, you can't go home and talk about that. And they look at me like I'm crazy. Financial disclosure. You guys have opted out of APOC. You are still required to file the municipal exemption form, I hope. I think your guys' was 1975. These are all the communities. I've luckily got to work with the community that is opted out, and I've worked for the Mat-Su Borough who was not opted out. So your assembly members are required to file APOC, which says how much they make. And it is very personal. Oh, there's a break. That's a long time for a break. I'm not going to talk about your regular meetings. You guys do have your special meetings. Do I need to talk about anything with the special meetings on if they can amend them? Everybody's good with that?
There, yeah.
Okay.
I'll move it real quick.
Your special meetings, when you call a special meeting, I do want to talk
If I
about.
call for a specific purpose, you can help me first.
You get, so right, so if you have a special meeting and it's got 3 items on it, you guys can choose not to vote on an item, but you cannot add to that agenda, or you shouldn't make a motion. You could say, I make a motion to postpone the work session because today, like if we were in a special meeting, which some people have them that way with the work session, I make a motion to postpone this because Sonia took 4 hours to talk. and we don't have enough time. So that would be a good use of that. I do want to talk about who owns the agenda. A lot of communities, and when I talk about some of this, it is best practice. It's just what I've seen, right? So your code probably allows the city clerk to have that agenda or the manager.
It's joint. The
Joint?
city- The
Okay.
city clerk and the manager.
And they have a deadline.
Yes.
Okay, so council, you have to get it to the clerk or the manager. That deadline passes. You should not go to that clerk, you should not go to that manager and say, I want this on here. Now, you could say, we have an emergency. The mayor could say, we missed this, our budget is supposed to be adopted or whatever it is, right? Then we will talk about what we need to do for that. That clerk and that manager own that agenda. Once that agenda is posted, the public, I don't care if that clerk sees a mistake on there and she put the wrong name. He or she should not take that agenda down and fix it. Right? It is the public's item. As soon as the motion is made and seconded, it is no longer the public's, it is no longer staff's, it is yours. Now, that's when the clerk would say, because we get a lot of these phone calls, guess what? Obviously, everybody sees it's the wrong date. I had one circumstance where they had two. The clerk missed the dates on the regular and special. They had the meetings 2 days apart. She's like, oh my gosh. She said, what are we gonna do? I said, you can keep that regular one, and the only reason they got to keep it is because guess what? Their code says the second Tuesday of every month at 7 o'clock. The special meeting can't happen because nowhere has the public been given the right date and the right time, right? Nowhere, it's not in their code. And I always recommend at the beginning of the year, if you don't, that the clerk posts our regular meetings are on this day. You have one posting where they're all there, this day, this time, and where they're held. And that meets that requirement.
We do have it on our city calendar, but I can certainly.
I would have the council at the beginning of every year adopt a resolution, just once again stating to the
We're all breaking.
regular, right?
So, can I ask a question? So once an agenda is posted, the agenda cannot be withdrawn.
It shouldn't be.
Okay.
And I know it happens, and I know it has happened here, but it should not be.
Okay.
Because it's the public's right? As sad as it is, when it comes to a major mistake and a clerk is bawling on the phone, right? It's done. The public is expecting that meeting to be at that time. So what's gonna happen is you're gonna have your regular meeting. The clerk should say, I missed the date, I missed the item, I missed whatever. And the council decides what to do, right?
Okay.
Yeah, council decides.
So it can be like modified, so like if they put Jim Bob instead of, Jane Doe, you can't modify.
No.
Okay.
I'm strict about that, right? And the reason I'm strict about that is because
The public.
you see that Jane and all of a sudden it's turned to Joe. We're back to how it looks. If the clerk is gonna change Jane to Joe, what else has changed?
Yeah,
What else is, well, we don't know, right? I made mistakes on an
Also,
agenda.
because you can't see the other one anymore. So.
yeah.
Yeah, I've made mistakes on an agenda.
Or you can
It's
fix
a
it on the
legal
record.
issue.
Huh?
We fix stuff on the.
Yeah,
Like I've noticed an AM number was wrong.
yeah.
So we certainly fix that on the record.
Where you get in a lot of trouble is those special meetings if it's noticed wrong. You
Right, we're
can't.
pulling something that's already been published. Like if it's gone through the process, it's already on the agenda and the agenda packet has been published, we can't pull another resolution or
The
anything.
council can.
The council can
Yeah.
publicly,
Yeah,
but
not
the
on the-
clerk or staff
No,
cannot go in
cannot.
and say, nope, we're gonna take it off the agenda.
Correct.
Like, I
Correct.
mean, 'cause that's where
I guess
come
my
from
point is
too,
trying to,
like,
we can
look.
fix a lot of stuff at the meeting.
At the meeting.
At the
Like,
meeting, it
hold
all
the
can be
agenda.
fixed.
We can
Yeah,
fix
like,
it at the
I mean,
meeting.
I've like, the contract references the wrong party.
Yeah, it's like we can fix it at the meeting.
Yeah, no, it needs to be happening in the public.
Oh,
Can I
sorry,
have
we have.
Yeah.
So what if it's a legal issue though? Is that also
Folks don't, I like legal, like,
like a liability?
It goes posted to the public and now it's out there.
how do you know who hasn't seen it and who has? Right? So she pulls it down or he pulls it down. Somebody's probably seen it. And then they're gonna say, oh, where'd that go? So what you could do, if it was a legal issue, a prime example would be something that should have been an executive session is not. It's posted, right? You get to that meeting and the city council say, hey, we made a mistake. We're gonna declare it. We need to have this in executive session. But you need to make sure it is really a legal issue. That goes really strongly to what he said. How does it look? If somebody pulls down that, the minute that is, I've seen a community just now, the clerk was crying. They haven't adopted a budget in 5 years. We have almost $1 million on that agenda from the state to give them. And he messed up the date. And he called me crying. He says, I messed up. And I said, fixable, right? Keep it up, keep it up. Council's gonna meet, council's gonna say, we call a special, or in this case, if the state had given them the deadline, we'll call an emergency meeting 24 hours from now, right? It was, that was a big one. And we're like, are you serious? Like, I didn't say that, but I was like, 5 years they haven't adopted a budget, and he put the agenda up and I have the wrong day. And you can't take it down. And he realized it literally, you guys, when he got home that night. Because they don't have internet and they don't have that. Yeah.
So it's like a genie in the bottle thing.
Yeah.
If it's been released, the only way you can put the genie back in the bottle is probably.
So you guys have your emergency meetings. We talked about that. I'm trying to make this by 6. We have in a work session right now. The question I heard the mayor kind of ask earlier about public testimony in work sessions. And if you want to allow for that, and I'm going to talk about, that's why I made the statement that no action can be made. But Mayor, if at any time a council member, if I do this training again, and you guys say, you know what, then I'm not saying either way. I'm going to let you guys allow. I've done it both ways. I've done it just like this, where the public's invited, right? But what a lot of people do is a special agenda. And on that special agenda, you would have motion to approve, go right into committee of the whole, and it's the work session. And in that statement, it should say why I'm here, who's going to speak. So it's the city council, the deputy clerk, the city attorney, my name, and what the topic is. And then that would allow, in the case of, Cordova, that I'm going to, they didn't even put their training, like we talked about. Their training is not advertised at all to the public. Which I think you should always at least say a quorum is possible, because you might only have 2 council members show up. However, no decisions will be made.
We've talked about utilizing that in like the chamber meetings.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Like the managers meet and greet. Start utilizing that more on our calendar so people know.
It is not required by Open Meetings Act, and we're going to talk about, so here's all of your requirements. So you guys all have those. So you guys do for work sessions, you do require a notice, right? So right there, you require a 3-day notice. And we talked about when a reasonable notice may be longer. Let's talk about Open Meetings Act and when the exceptions to that. And you're right, back in the day when they said you going to a picnic and what that means. So an Open Meeting Act ensures public participation, mandates all meetings of governmental body be public, broadly interpreted. Who's covered? Public entities, governmental bodies. Who's not? Individuals, employees and staff, membership organizations, private corporations. That always gets everybody, right? The U.S. government does not fall under Open Meetings Act. The native entities are tribes that we have. They are not. Policy making meetings, so gray area. Advisory only meetings. A gathering of a majority of the governing body where a matter upon which that body is empowered to act is considered collectively by all the members. And we're going to have some more information because I know we have a lot of questions on this. A gathering of members of a governing body where the purpose is considering a matter to advise and upon which the governmental body is empowered to act. The public's right. OMA aids the people's business. The people do not yield their sovereignty. Representatives don't decide what is good for the public to know. That's why I say declare it. Declare it, declare it, declare it. Right to remain informed, right to be heard, reasonable notice and opportunity to attend. Reasonable. You guys, I read your code. You guys have a really pretty common thing, except for don't take those agendas down. Notice has the date, time, and place. You guys posted 3 public places? Your website? Okay.
Website on the door.
Home rule might be different, Benji, so check your print or broadcast. Does it go on the Frontiersman?
It doesn't this time.
Huh? It does now? Good. Must be consistent. That's the main key.
That's where I'm good, yeah.
Must be consistent.
The meeting's not.
Yeah,
We'll move on.
Yeah.
We're thinking about changing a few things.
Yeah. So how would you, so how do you change that?
So
I mean, I'm just gonna real quick.
We publish it.
Yeah,
We publish it,
but
we're gonna make a change.
that might go to that word reason, to where you need to make sure that notice is longer,
right.
right? Because you're changing something that is really substantial.
Yeah.
So you know what, maybe the public needs more in 30 days, right? So, yeah. We talked a little bit about serial communications, polling council members, the email.
Yeah, maybe some people are just getting their times from the Frontiersman, and that's why they don't really come to
Oh, could
special
be.
meetings or emergency
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah, so try to get all those posted.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So for serial communications, you're saying if there's one council member and like 4 different people go to that council member separately and they're unaware of it, so how do you make sure that doesn't happen if everybody's unaware that it's going on, and except for maybe the person that they're all going to, is that person supposed to say something?
So-
or like if a third or
Because
fourth person comes to
what the
them?
lobbyist does, so
Yeah.
there's.
Right. So this is where we got to be just mindful, right? We're not going to sit there and we're not going to judge each other all the time, because it is his right to go talk to him. It is his absolute right to say, why are you putting this forward? Explain this to me, one-on-one, right? But pretty soon, if you start hearing that all of them have done it, and then at the meeting, all of a sudden it's just yes, 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 yes. Why did you vote yes? Why did you vote yes? Right? So that's why it's just important to declare. I talked to council member X. I think it's important that we do vote yes. So some of those gray areas for the public, it's how does that look, right? So I would have a council member say, hey, Sonia, some cities require 2 council members, so they have to talk. Who is it? Is it Matt Super? Some cities require 2 council members to put anything forward.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Oh, okay, so you guys, so 2 have to
Or
talk.
But it's on the dais. though.
Yeah, so 2 really do need to communicate that they're on the same page, right? So I'm glad to hear that it is you guys, because some require that. So you have to. You can't, the point here is that you're not judging each other on what they're doing, but that you're going to make yourself a better council member by declaring something and by saying, this is how this happens, and why can't it be done in public, right?
Can I elaborate?
Yeah.
on that? So some of the case law that I've seen on OMA, especially serial communications, is that the challenges that the court really had with impeding on the public's right was when, Councilwoman A goes to Councilwoman B and says, hey, I talked to C and D, and they said that they're gonna vote on this, so you need to do it because of this. So they're referencing the
That's a
intent
good way to do it.
to vote, like that's, versus like, let's talk about this or something random. They're actually referencing other council members that would equal quorum intent on how they're going to vote, which is influencing behind the things. And that's when the court, those were the distinguishing things that the court was like, the intention of like, so-and-so says they're gonna vote, so you need to do this too. And those are the hidden background dealings that the whole purpose of OMA is to eliminate. And that component, because obviously when we have a public member, they are hired lobbyists. They're gonna go to every single legislator and say, we want you to vote this way. And like, it would take forever to anything get passed if you're like, so lobbyists, so-and-so talk to me, and that you wouldn't share because lobbyists are a different thing. But you're definitely not gonna say, it's like, in terms of that pressure. That, at least that's how.
And I think that is mentioned, she's right, that is mentioned in this. This has a lot of case law in it. So it's those gray areas where you're like, wait a minute, and that's what, these are court rulings on those types of items.
Yeah, so if I kind of dumb that down and elaborate on it. So let's say scenario where, because it sounds a little bit contrary to what I understand. So my understanding is that I can't talk to, I think the maximum I talk to is 2 other council members about something going on, like legislation or whatever it is. But what you're saying is that I could talk about it with more than that. Like I could call up every member of the council and just talk about it in generalities and
You shouldn't.
but I can't, okay, I was
You
trying
shouldn't,
to,
yeah. No,
Out of an
because,
abundance of caution to try to avoid communication,
Yeah.
you are limiting yourself to 2 others
Uh-huh.
to completely
There you
protect OMA.
Okay,
And that is a really reasonable discussion. The case, or decision, so the case law I'm referring to is when that attempt was done in general conversations, or they just weren't counting it, and it happened to be that the one in the middle was talked to by 4 other ones, because
Right.
everyone was upset about it and wanted to have these conversations, and we're like, hey, so let's say you only talked to 2, and you only talked to 2, and you only talked to 2, but then one of those 2 is already been talked to by 5 people. Then at that point, what the court specifically said was that the intent was, I'm being told by this many people, this is how they're going to vote and why, and that equals serial communication in OMA, because ultimately you have more than a quorum discussing the concept.
yeah, so if I misspoke, yes, no, you should not speak to everybody.
yeah, okay.
Because that,
The goal is that we're supposed to do our business in public.
100%.
And so we should be having, so like when it comes to debate, we should say, I support this because, or I don't support this because. And that, all that should happen in a public meeting. in a public way.
100%.
Not that vote.
That is the goal.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to address, which I'm sure you're gonna go into next, is social gatherings.
Yeah.
Because I must get, everybody calls me every time there's an event asking me this question. There's 2 strong, and I know she'll go into this, but there are 2 elements to an OMA violation. One, you have to be discussing something that is going to be determined by the group. And 2, it has to be 4 or more.
Yep, and we are gonna talk about that.
Okay.
And how it can start as not an Open Meetings Act violation, but then what happens if it turns into one out of hand?
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Earlier you talked about ex parte communication. What if there was a serial communication? If those members that had that communication then came into the meeting and did an ex parte and said, hey, we talked about this. Does that null or eliminate the violation?
It does eliminate the violation. However, you would have to consider what the discussion was and if you felt as a council that it impeded on the rights of the people, right? So like it does eliminate that violation because now everybody has the exact same information. But in the case of especially things like permits or where you've really discussed a due process of a person or a land use thing, then we're falling into maybe other laws that we would need to look into. But yeah, declaring it does remedy the situation. Yeah.
Because the legal remedy to an OMA is a lawsuit within 180 days. And usually what that is an injunction to fix the violation, the robbing of the public's right occurring behind the back door. So it's not like it's, cash damages it's usually like, okay, we're voiding this law.
There you go. Yeah.
So that you don't.
So if it does go to a judge,
Yeah,
the
so
judge
if you preemptively fix it and either amend or postpone or, do it, or just, we're gonna not consider this at this time, then that would be preemptively fixing it when they would go to court.
That's a good way to. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
I'm glad we're doing this together because I don't know all the attorney stuff. Executive sessions. Do you guys have any questions on these? Does your clerk attend your executive sessions? Who attends them?
The clerk attends them now,
Okay.
and I'm occasionally in them, and then the city manager and I kind of tag team depending on what it is. Actually, I think it's gotten to the point that all 3 of us are usually in everything.
Okay. Usually if that happens, I do recommend that the council make the motion, especially the mayor, make the motion to go into executive session for the purpose of, and state who's going to be in that executive session.
Yeah.
if that doesn't happen.
Yeah, we've gotten really short about that.
Good.
You're welcome, everybody.
Okay, so any gathering where more than 3 members or a majority of the governing body meet to discuss issues in which they are empowered to act counts as a legal meeting and must be open to the public and given reasonable notice. 4 members of the city council are at a private barbecue at the same time. Is this a situation of violation of the Open Meetings Act? Yes, maybe, no.
No.
Maybe.
What they talk about.
That's what they talk about at that barbecue.
Well, based on those facts, with no extra things, it only has one element. So without it, it's pretty short.
Well, and then that's where it gives the appearance that there could have been an
Yep.
open meeting
Yep.
act violation.
So that's a maybe, right? Now, if I was the clerk and you guys are going to a private barbecue, Christmas parties always got me a little wound up sometimes. I wouldn't notice a Christmas party. I had in the past a couple of times. You know, you guys chose to notice it. Some communities don't. But let's just say today I've mentioned a couple of things about I probably amend your organizational chart. I get a lot of head nods, right? If you guys all said, yep, let's do that, now we are in an Open Meetings Act violation. So it depends on what you're talking about the barbecue. You don't need to put that out, but if you're the 4th council member at that barbecue and you realize, oh no, what did we just do? Then you need to declare that and then get advice from your attorney on how to fix that.
Can I ask you a question about that real quick? So, if you have, let's say a council member that would typically go to an event, you know, in the community that they knowingly support, and then you purposely have 3 council members that come, and they have other community members going up and purposely asking that person questions on legislation that's coming up. Then and they say, you know, I can't answer that right now. So then they would come at the dais at the next meeting and say, would they say?
If they didn't answer the question, I don't think they need to.
Okay.
Right.
Then they would just know that they did it.
Yeah.
And
If they saw all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, there's 5 of us here, you guys don't need to leave. You just need to be mindful of what you're talking about, right?
we're just not talking about.
It's back to what I talked about. If that Senator Murkowski or Senator Sullivan's addressing the Palmer Chamber of Commerce, all 7 of us are likely to go to that
Yeah.
party. That's totally not, just like this
Yeah.
barbecue, not a violation of the Open Meetings Act. It's only if 4 or more gather in a corner and say, hey, we're gonna do this.
I really liked what the senator said. I think we should do a resolution now, right? Now we're in a problem.
Yeah.
But no, all of you guys showing up to one, it's not
Right, and especially because we've got massive events, like we've got the Alaska Air Gathering and the Alaska Fair, and I'm like, if you guys all are at the Alaska Fair.
You guys have Christmas parties probably,
Yeah.
or if you do. So like this one, 4 members are, no, okay, maybe not. No thanks, we're not spending Christmas together.
We're
Get
good,
it.
we're good.
4 members of the city council are at a private barbecue at the same time. They're discussing last night's football game. No. 4 members of the city council are at a private barbecue. They're discussing a possible ordinance to ban the eating of ice cream in all municipal buildings.
Yes.
Yes.
That would be for the former interim city manager. Always
Now, I am going to go back to what this council member said.
Okay.
It would not be a bad idea at that next meeting to just say, hey, we were all at the football thing, but we didn't make any sense. Because the public might have saw all of you there, right? It's not a bad idea to declare it. A new committee has been formed to discuss a new community strategic plan. The committee meets in private at one of the committee's members' home. Yes. There's a new community strategic plan committee meeting at City Hall in 2 hours. Maybe. What is the purpose of that community strategic plan committee? Are they advisory? Are they ad hoc? Do they make no recommendations? If it's an election board, it's the city clerk's election board, and all they're doing is this, they don't fall under Open Meetings Act. It's the city clerk talking to her election board and they have a meeting. So it depends what that strategic plan committee's purpose is and what they do. That's
Well,
why.
The 2 hours kind of makes it problematic.
Yeah.
That's an optics thing again, yeah.
There's a new committee, strategic plan committee meeting at City Hall in 5 days. The city clerk has posted notices for the meeting in all regular posting places. It's not. So in this case, like he said, they do fall under OMA. An executive session is being held. The meeting will not be noticed to the public because the public will not be able to attend anyway. Yes. Parliamentary procedures. The fact that, and I know that sometimes meetings can be rough. I've sat in plenty of them that way. You guys, is Robert's Rules. There are still a couple of communities that is not. There it is the other one, which I can't even think of right now. It's about the motions, how they're made, how they're disposed of, the types, the relationship. Do you guys all understand motions for the most part? I mean, I can come back and get another training on just Robert's Rules. I like Robert's Rules. Once again, I don't know what I was thinking as a child, but I want you guys to understand motions are your power.
None of us were thinking.
Yeah, true. You didn't sound big. Motions are your guys' power, right? Understand that you guys have a lot of power with motions. They're classified into 4 types. The main motion, substitute motions, privileged, incidental. Main, I make a motion to approve the agenda. Second one, I make a motion to amend. Privileged, I make a motion to move the items around because the governor just walked in. And incidental, I make a motion for a recess. Brings the business before the council. They can modify, so your second can modify or dispose of the main motion. Motion to postpone. Benji, do you guys use lay on the table? No. Okay, good. Do you guys split the question?
They haven't.
They have?
They have
So-
not.
Oh, they have not?
Some questions regarding motion to lay on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
what it said in Robert's Rules.
So lay on the table. Lay on the table. I make a motion to lay that item on the table. If a council member comes to me and says, Sonia, I'm the one that created this, I don't like it. Robert's Rules does say if that is not picked up from the table, I think it's at the next regular meeting, the motion dies. It automatically falls off. So you can't lay it on the table. Some communities, I think Wasilla lays it on the table for that meeting.
So is that like a holding pattern, basically?
A holding pattern, and with a timeline. I think Wasilla's is, if I read their code and I remember right, they can say, the governor just walked in, I make a motion to lay on the table, resolution 2706, it goes down, the governor leaves, I make a motion to pick resolution 2706 up off the table. At that next meeting, I recommend the clerk always just automatically put that on, lay on the table. If there is no motion to pick it up, it dies.
So our code,
Unless your code says
it doesn't directly address that.
Hmm.
It just says we follow Robert. I mean, it has a few things and then it says everything else falls under Robert's Rule of Order, which this does follow.
Robert's Rules is, it's the next, I think, regular meeting that item has to be picked up. People use this for very bad intentions
And if I
sometimes.
can clarify one thing, and we can only do 2 amendments to a main motion, is that correct? I remember, I thought there was
You can do 2 amendments, no, you can do lots of
Because
amendments to an
we've
amendment.
had 5 budget amendments.
Well, yeah, I just remember like
Just usually we
we've
do
had
2
to.
at a time, because
Yeah.
they start to get really muddied.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
because it's caused big confusion.
Well,
and
we're talking about amendments.
Yeah.
No, and he's right, so, at a certain point, right, I wanna make the building blue, I wanna make the building yellow. If I was the clerk in that situation, I would say, let's vote. We're gonna vote on yellow, we're gonna vote on blue, right? Or if yellow wins, blue dies, right? Like it goes back up the chain.
Yeah.
So it just depends, no, motions can go, unfortunately, if you know what you're doing,
Yeah.
they can get a little crazy. Split the question is not a bad motion. I've seen it used properly. A split the question would be, I am, and I know this one's controversial, but the borough just did it, and I know that you guys have had this question. I'm certifying the election, but I am not certifying this part. That's splitting the question, right? So you can vote on approving a part. Now, you have to make sure that that ordinance can stand alone by itself with the approval of one thing. I split the question that we're going to adopt dog ordinance, but I don't want to charge $50. So you're splitting that, but I make a motion to split the question. We're gonna vote on the dog ordinance, but I do not want to vote on how much. So you're not amending the ordinance, you're splitting. So, and I can get you guys information on splitting the question. I don't recommend it a lot of times. I think amending is just better. But in certain cases, especially if you have an ordinance that maybe has the school board budget and the council budget, well, I just want to vote on the council. I don't want to vote on the school board budget. I'm splitting the question. Immediate importance, motion to adjourn, motion to take a recess, motion to call for orders of the day. Who can call for orders of the day? Can a city clerk call for orders of the day? Because you're, nope. Call for orders of the day would be on the agenda, and you see public comments, and somehow you guys have missed, the mayor's missed that. I call for orders of the day. We got off topic. We're back, right?
Back up.
Back up. They're immediate importance. To raise a question of privilege, that is, I need to talk to the city attorney or clerk, I think. Yeah, incidental, so those are your motions. I need to talk to, the procedure and related point of order. Who gets to make that one? You guys only. Council only.
Yeah, that's okay.
Council only. Some clerks and some people think that the public gets to make that motion. Absolutely not.
No.
Parliamentary inquiry, withdraw. What happens if you have a motion on the floor and a second, and somebody says, I withdraw? But somebody's already seconded it.
The second is
You have to see if they concur.
Yeah, they can vote. Yeah.
What's the parliamentary inquiry? Does that have to do with timing or what's basically asking the clerk for their expertise?
Has to go through the mayor. Mayor has to agree. Mayor has to say, yeah, go ahead and talk to the clerk. Yeah. Motion to suspend the rules. Or if you don't have a clerk that's strong, somebody look it up. Grab the Robert's Rules book, make sure you have one. Suspend the rules. That's usually used in the case of, you look at your agenda, you see the clerk made a mistake. Public comments is after the adoption of all the ordinances. I make a motion to suspend the rules. Or if you forgot it, motion to amend the agenda, right? Oh, crud. So we're suspending the rules. Oh, another thing would be, I make a motion to suspend our rule of 3 minutes, and we're going to allow the public to talk for 4 minutes. You would need everybody's approval on that. That's suspending the rules. That's a better example. Motion to eat ice cream. Motion to amend chocolate. What do we got here? Motion to adjourn for lunch. Yeah, you guys go backwards. I'm sure you guys do that. I think it's important that clerks put on their agendas if a motion is pending. I think a lot of people get confused. So motion to lay on the table, motion to postpone. I really like motion to adopt. You've got a second. Motion to postpone or refer. Okay, so it's done. It's that next agenda. You don't have to adopt. You don't have to make the motion to adopt again. It's already done.
But it would be on the agenda, but probably with a note that says.
That's how it should be.
There's already a motion.
Is that how you guys
That's
do
what
it?
we do, we
Good.
put in parentheses,
Yeah.
motion's already on the table.
Yeah, because motion's on the table. Good. Members should always seek recognition from the chair. Mayor. Now, you guys, when I see this, I know that this is easier said than done. I know emotions get high in a council meeting. I know that, right? So, when that happens, and if you don't feel that you've had the right to speak the way that you should, or if the mayor has said, nope, we're done, we're voting, there's ways to make a motion to allow for that, right? So you would have to get the approval of the rest of the council. So right here, but it is important that you always go through the mayor. I have seen council members get up and walk out and leave, and I've got to experience, just like all of us. So we have that. Does the clerk or the mayor state the motion? Usually? Okay. Do you guys put them in writing?
Sometimes.
Sometimes good. My first time I did at the assembly, the clerk left me. 200 people in the audience, newspapers there. I always do cities this size. I'd always work for cities. The assembly was out of control. And I look over at the mayor at a certain point and I said, I can't keep up. I said, and the assembly member was sitting next to me. I said, I need assembly member to put his motion in paper. And I was scared to death. I said, I can't keep up with these motions. And they made something like 300 motions that night. And I could not keep up. And so the mayor, I asked the mayor, I said, Madam Mayor, can I please request, can you request? And she did, and he said, the borough clerk's never made me do that. And the mayor said, well, right now the acting clerk is asking to do that. So he goes to write it down. He says, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, well,
And that's what the audience did. That's what the audience did. And then, so it is okay to be like, I don't understand what Council Member Smith is saying. Like, Mayor, can we please have him write that down? Or Mayor, can the clerk restate that again? You guys have a lot of power in those meetings. And you make sure that you understand what you're voting on. Because in that case, I didn't. And I looked over at the attorney, and the attorney's kind of like, good luck, Sonia. And I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. And so later, it was a joke with him and me. And he had, every time he's like, do I gotta write it down, Sonia? And I'm like, no, not every time, but if you don't know what you're saying, yes. Okay, here you go, council debates. I don't like it. I'm lactose intolerant. They vote. Chair announces the result. The motion is carried. Let's see. Oh my goodness, I forget every time. The commissioner's office approves these, so we gotta just. Questions relating to the rights and privileges of the council or an individual. Raise a question of privilege. So, comfort. Okay, it's hot in here. I'm tired, I need a break. Or matters of urgency. I've got to go. Somebody's hurt. Point of order to correct a breach in rules. We've missed an item on the agenda. A tool for ensuring rules and laws are being followed, both parliamentary and otherwise. Does not end a debate, but brings the debate into accordance with the parliamentary procedure. I don't think it's in here, but it's really important too that your debate stays on with the motion on the floor, that it is
On topic.
yeah, that's on topic, right? So you're talking, the motion on the floor is now blue. You can only talk about the word blue, not about back up here at the main motion, or right here. That happens a lot with councils. Suspend the rules, or we're gonna have a recess early. Must ensure fundamental rules and rights of minorities still respected. I'm glad to hear that you guys do that. And like I said, sometimes I know that you are frustrated by the mayors, especially if they call for the question. I have seen lots of times where a council member says, nope, I make a motion that we don't call for the question, and if they get a second, then there we are. And then you're voting to override the mayor's ruling. One person speak at a time and allow everyone the right to speak. Oops, and there it is. 6:05. Woo! But if you guys want me to come back to do any other training, in July we are doing election training I'm doing election training every Tuesday. It's on our website. We do not publicize that. Only council members city employees, and staff are allowed to attend our training. So you have to request the Zoom meeting, and we do that for pretty obvious reasons. Because guess what, we're the state and we don't follow Open Meetings Act. So we get, when it comes to situations like that where we are providing training on certain things, we have that. So yeah, reach out to me. And I'm sorry, I know we went fast, and I appreciate everybody. I know it was really basic, but I hope that everybody had at least one thing
Good stuff.
that they took home with them. So
Good, thank you.
perfect, you're welcome. We did 6 o'clock. If anybody doesn't have one of these Open Meetings Act